Good evening, wrestling fans. Welcome to the GCRN Podcast Arena for the Geekcast Radio Top 100 Wrestlers Countdown. Coming to the ring are your hosts, representing the GCRN, Kevin Optisolo Thompson.
Money isn't everything, it's the only thing.
And representing RavingHipster.com, TV's Mr. Neil.
The whole wrestling world is going to stand up and take notice.
The chosen one.
And representing Simplistic Reviews, DJ Valentine.
And there isn't a damn thing anyone can do about it.
Also from Simplistic Reviews, Matthew Stewart.
We drank more beer and we've been on more roads than most of you people can ever imagine.
And now, here is our main event. 100 wrestlers enter. Who will be number one? Let's find out. Let's get ready to podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Geekcast Radio Network's Top 100 Wrestler Countdown. This is Optimus Solo. I am your host for this journey through the 100 best wrestlers of all time. But just like last time, I am not alone. I brought and I assembled the best team that I could of wrestling aficionados, starting with TV's Mr. Neil. Hello.
I am so excited for this countdown to Tom McGee.
Tom McGee, deep pull there. All right. And we have a tag team of sorts from the Simplistic Reviews this time. Matthew, hello.
If I had half the brains you guys had, I would have a half a brain for you. Can I do that over again?
This is live.
Okay, damn it.
And Matthew's tag team partner, Mr. DJ Valentine. Welcome.
We're really glad that you're our friend, and this is the podcast that will never, ever end. Wowie, guys. How you guys doing?
It is kind of a podcast that never ends, it seems like, sometimes as we get our way through 100 different people to talk about. So as you guys listened to or heard in the last week's episode, we started with numbers 100 through 76. Today, we're going to be giving you guys numbers 75 through 51, if I do my numbers right. But I didn't last time, so there is a little bit of housekeeping to go over. I apologize. I am a veteran when it comes to this top 100 stuff, but I did make a flub on last week's episode. So we have some corrections to make because we accidentally had some people in there that we shouldn't have been talking about. So we could have kayfabed it. We could have just acted like we didn't mess up and then just gone on with it. But I'm going to try to give people their just dues and a chance to talk about where we screwed up. So I do apologize, but it happens, especially when I am juggling the number of Excel spreadsheets and columns and point values and different things. And luckily, I didn't catch it on the record last time, but as we were going through, I was thinking about a couple of the entrants, and I'm like, that just isn't. Did that many people really vote for this person? So I immediately went through and did a cross-check after the record, and I was like, this makes more sense. So I know everybody is waiting on the edge of their seats to hear who is getting booted from the countdown that we talked about last week. So it's a swerve, man. It's a swerve, brah. So we're gonna take some people and boot them out of the top 100. I will get you guys' reactions on the 5 that are leaving us, and then we will talk about the ramifications of that. So the 5 in no particular order that are leaving the top 100 countdown are as follows. First off, Raven will not be included in the top 100. He talked about him.
Raven?
What about you, Raven?
What
about you? And apparently it was an attempted ECW takeover because Taz will also be leaving us. So Taz and Raven actually did not have the point totals to make the top 100. Rounding off that 5, we'll see maybe mixed reactions on these 3. Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, did not quite make the countdown either. We announced him as number 100, I believe, last week. Mr. William Regal also gets booted.
Wow. Sorry, Sunshine.
Yes. And this one I know you guys won't be upset about.
He's smirched.
You won't be upset about the 5th one, because I remember what you said about him during the recording. The Road Dogg, Jesse James.
Oh, thank God. I was so pissed when I heard that.
Children of all ages.
So angry.
So Jesse James, William Regal, Paul Orndorff, Taz, and Raven should not have been announced. I apologize. They did not make the top 100. Jesse James and William Regal both would have been very close or mentioned in the honorable mention section, so they did come very close. Paul Orndorff a little bit further off, Taz a lot further off, and Raven was not anywhere near it. So I don't know how that happened. So, I mean, I do, but it's too complicated to talk about.
This was like the failed WCW, ECW invasion.
Basically. So that means 5 people are out, which means that 5 other people are now in.
Ooh.
And we have to figure out how that works. Now, one of them that would have been out is not going to be talked about until we start getting through the 75 through 51. But the other ones we'll be mentioning now. So 2 of them we talked about as honorable mentions, so we don't need to go into a lot of detail. But coming in now at number 99, which we talked about as an honorable mention last time, would be AJ Lee. So she actually did make the countdown. And coming in now at number, 93, would be Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Matthew's happy now.
So AJ Lee and Greg the Hammer Valentine were honorable mentions. They are now in the top 100. So before we talk about the other people that did not get talked about yet that we needed to talk about last episode, Matthew, what do you think about the 5 that were removed and AJ Lee and Greg the Hammer Valentine so far being added?
A little upset about William Regal not making the top 100 because I think we kind of had this long discourse almost in like the Facebook chat about him being one of the last real good heels in WWE or WWF programming. And his man's man gimmick was awesome, and part of the Vince McMahon Kiss My Ass Club and everything else, and him actually wrestling Goldberg while Goldberg was being a little bitch about it and complained and cried. I mean, that's top 100 worthy right there. So, and I've got AJ Lee's in it. Awesome. I like AJ Lee a lot. She was the one that dropped her female pipe bomb. Whether it was a work or not, it was still a very, very fun pipe bomb, much like her husband's pipe bomb, who maybe we'll talk about later on the show too. So I love AJ Lee, though. She was like kind of cute and quirky and weird and everything. So more female representation. Woo!
There you go. And what about your Greg the Hammer Valentine making it up here?
Yeah, he's cool. He's fine. I mean, it's like it was just like Greg the Hammer Valentine. Was his finishing move kind of like the bionic elbow that Dusty Rhodes had? What was his finishing move?
The figure 4.
Was it?
He's a leg lock man.
Yep.
Oh, he's big. Man. He's blonde. He's white. He's doing the figure 4 leg lock, buddy.
He was like,
he's not as sausagey as Ric Flair, but it's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's like discount Ric Flair.
Exactly.
Very
without the flair. Without the flair. TV's Mr. Neal, what do you think about the 5 that exited and so far the 2 that have jumped into the top 100?
A little disappointed about Raven. Really disappointed about Regal. Utterly besmirched. Gonna have to kiss some major ass to get back in, I guess. Don't know too much about AJ Lee. I like Greg the Hammer Valentine. Even though he was I have to say that the portion of his WWF career that I remember is not one of his better runs, I guess. I seem to remember him in the latter days of his career. He was basically like laying down for everyone. I do know that he was a Intercontinental Champion at one point. Had a great run with rugged Ronnie Garvin for a little while. The Hammer Jammer. That was outstanding.
What a move name. Jesus.
So it was like literally a shin pad that Ronnie Garvin put on his leg, and it blocked the figure 4. It was awesome.
I remember this. Oh, I remember this now. As soon as you said shin pad, I remember.
Yeah, but those are my feelings. I kind of wish Raven was still in, but oh well. I'm glad to see Taz get the boot.
It does feel like it's fitting, though, for Raven to be left off. Like, that fits his persona, complaining in the corner about not being there or something of that nature, I feel like. So, what about me? What about Raven? DJ, did you have a chance to listen back to the first segment, or what do you feel about the adjustments that have been made?
I was just happy that Road Dogg got kicked off because I think you guys had him above Samoa Joe, which really, my foot still hurts from kicking the table where I was sitting listening to the last podcast where Samoa Joe is under the Road Dogg Jesse James. So yes, I'm happy that he's now doing what he does, whatever that may be.
I mean, he can still be like the announcer for it or something. Like he can still be on the outskirts. Like,
I mean, when you're comparing, I mean, as a tag team, sure, I can understand the generation, like New Age Outlaws. But as a singles wrestler above Samoa Joe, come on.
I mean, I don't know. Joe's almost killed a lot. Maybe that's why people are like, come on.
He's wanted for murder. What do you want from him?
He almost killed Tyson Kidd once. Remember that?
I was there.
I was there. I saw it. But have you seen Tyson Kidd's hair before? He doesn't have very good hair.
It warrants a murder. It warrants some killing.
That hair is a crime, my friend. Yes, death sentence.
Tyson Kidd mentions right up front. I didn't expect that. So, okay, so that is the 5 that have left. That is the 2 honorable mentions that are now in. So to clear up the rest of the business that has to happen, there should have been 5 other individuals that we talked about last episode, which means that one of the newcomers jumped all the way to the second episode, and then 2 people we talked about last week actually jumped into this next section of the countdown as well. So there will be a few more complications along the way, but after this, we'll be cleared and ready to go from here on out with no errors. So I'm going to go through the 5 that we should have talked about last week, and then when we get to the ones that we already talked about last week for this week's episode, we will just kind of mention them and skip past them because we've already said our piece about those guys. So that should clear up any time constraints that we would have had. So not that there are time constraints. You guys know these are long episodes, so we don't apologize for that. I mean, come on. How many hours of wrestling do you have to sit through every day or every week to try to catch up? It's like 17 hours now. So we're just trying to emulate them. So, all right. So we have a new number 100, guys. That should have been talked about last week, just barely sneaking into the countdown. Turns out that he would have beaten Sergeant Slaughter in a tiebreaker to get the 100 spot. And that would have been the Big Boss Man.
If you ever take a trip down to Cobb County, Georgia, you better read the signs, respect the law and order, you'll serve hard times. You'll be serving hard times.
Have talked about the Big Boss Man at number 100, and we didn't. So he is now in the countdown at number 100. We will mention a couple things about him right now. I guess I should have gone through the names: War Machine, the Guardian Angel, Ray Traylor, Big Bubba Rogers, and of course Big Boss Man. So, DJ, what do you think about Big Boss Man now being in the top 100 as well?
He's one of the few. When I started getting into wrestling when I was younger, he was one of the ones that stuck out. And I remember recently hearing that story where Stone Cold was talking about getting hit by Big Boss Man.
The clothesline that he did.
Yeah. I was like, that's a great story. But yeah, Big Boss Man, he's in the and Matt will be happy. I guess this is kind of a occupational gimmick.
Yeah,
there you go.
This is our first occupational gimmick of the countdown. So
there you go. So you get the Big Boss Man. He's probably one of the best occupational gimmick characters of all time.
He's up there.
He's got to be up there.
He's up there. He's in the discussion. That's another countdown for another time, I think. That's a sub-countdown to this one.
Yeah.
Occupational top 100.
He debuted in 1985, ended up wrestling until the early 2000s. Obviously, no longer with us, died in 2004. TV's Mr. Neal, what do you think of Big Boss Man entering the countdown?
Love the Big Boss Man. I would have been very upset if he wasn't on the list. I was very surprised that he was off the list, and they just got back in on a technicality. I remember him very much being the Southern prison guard turned wrestler somehow for some reason. not as strange as like a wrestling NASCAR driver or a garbage man or whatever the hell else they had, a plumber.
It is a hockey player. You had a hockey player.
I can buy that a prison guard could turn wrestler.
He was voted the most improved wrestler by the Wrestling Observer newsletter in 1987. Also, they voted him the worst feud of the year in 96 with John Tenta and the worst feud of the year in 1999 with The Big Show. He did get some gold. He got the Hardcore Championship for WWE 4 times, WWF Tag Team 1 time with Ken Shamrock, and he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2016. Matthew, what do you think of the Big Boss Man coming in at the countdown, and what's your favorite Big Boss Man moment?
Oh man, there's I don't think there's really any when he first came in the scene, he had the blue. The thing that always kind of bothers me now too, he always rocked the Confederate flag emblem on his arm again. So that bothers me now as just a human being in general. But I always found that to be kind of weird. And then when he turned into like the corporate boss man is when he, I think, had his best moments. He had kidnapping a dog and cooking it and feeding it to somebody. Then he had dragging a dead man's coffin away while a man jumped on the coffin, and that's the Big Show feud, which is amazing.
That was so stupid.
And then essentially being killed by the Undertaker in that Hell in the Cell match when he pretty much hung the Big Boss Man, similar to what people do in prison. I guess I don't know if that was something going for that. Maybe that was like a Jeffrey Epstein type thing. Think about it now. Oh man, we're getting topical now. I love the Big Boss Man.
He also had I remember the handcuffs on, what was it, Hulk Hogan on the ropes way back when. Yeah. So that was like the first time I'd ever seen that. I'm sure it had been done in a lot of different independent or other wrestling places, but that's the first time I had seen it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting.
And then he had that weird feud with the ex-con, who I guess the guy who like supposedly broke out of prison and wanted revenge on the Big Boss Man. And I remember the ex-con handcuffing the Big Boss Man, like beating his ass with like his like nightstick or something like that. And I remember seeing that as a kid. I was like, oh my God, this policeman's being beaten by a criminal. Of course, it's not real. I'm an adult now and I understand. I couldn't process it as a kid.
I've grown and changed.
I've grown up a lot. Obviously, talking about wrestling now.
There's a good story about Big Boss Man in, I think it was something to wrestle with, as far as trying to go back to where he was a prison guard at and doing some footage and whatnot, but it didn't go so well. But I'm not going to try to retell the story, but it was definitely one of those interesting, like Bruce Pritchard segments where he's trying to film and things go awry. So, but he is our new number 100. We also have a new number 99 that we didn't talk about last week that we need to talk about and at least give him a mention. I like doing this. DJ, if you'd heard, I like trying to give some names out and see if you guys can figure out who it is. So we're going to go with his ring name at one point was the Cosmic Cowboy number 2. At another point, it was the Modern Day Warrior.
Yes.
And most people, though, would know him either by his real name or his gimmick as the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich. Von Erich family member makes the countdown. Neil, you responded first, so what do you think about this one?
I love the Texas Tornado. One-footed wrestler. He wrestled with 1 foot.
Yep.
A lot of people didn't know. In fact, nobody knew that until after he died.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't
want to get into the whole. I don't want to get into this whole thing, but I went into the hospital last year and I lost my foot, so it was kind of like this. I kind of like started watching his matches to see how he was walking because it kind of like I just wanted to see like how well you can get back on your feet, so to speak, seeing what he went through. And I was just really amazed. You really can't tell unless you look at one of his boots. One of his boots is kind of like a different shape. And I suspect that's why he wore tassels on his boots after a while.
Yeah.
But, yeah, shame that he took his life in like what 92, 93, somewhere.
93.
It was like
yeah. And the bigger shame about the whole family because most of them also did similar things. But he debuted in 1979. Obviously, spent time in multiple different places, including NWA, WCCW, USWA, WWF, Global Wrestling, etc. As far as some of the accolades that he has, he was a WWF Intercontinental Champion one time and also inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2009. Has a bunch of other gold when it comes to NWA and WCCW and WCWA, etc. But we won't go into all of those. Matthew, what do you think of one of the Von Erichs at least making the countdown here at 99?
I mean, we'll see if anybody else from the Von Erich family makes it. But if there's going to be one more memorable character, it's probably him. I always thought of him looking a lot like the Ultimate Warrior when I was growing up too. And then I always remember the match when he won that Intercontinental Champion against Mr. Perfect, which was one of those big surprises where it's like, oh, you beat Mr. Perfect, which was amazing. So didn't really see a lot of matches outside of that one match with Mr. Perfect, but he had that cool look, the very Ultimate Warrior-esque look that was always very appealing to me as a kid.
I think that's where they got the modern day warrior gimmick from at one point. I want to say so.
There was that one Survivor Series where it was the Ultimate Warrior, the modern day warrior, and the Road Warriors all on one team.
Warrior.
Maybe that's why they named him that. Maybe it was just that show that he got named that. I don't know. But
no, they were trying to get rid of the Warriors, so like Road Warriors got turned to Legion of Doom, and Texas Tornado became a thing. So they were trying to only have one warrior.
The ultimate warrior.
All DJ, warriors are pikers compared to this warrior.
DJ, what do you think of the Texas Tornado coming in here?
I'm literally just like Matt. I remember him the first time I saw him he was with the Ultimate Warrior. I think they were tagging together. Like, are they brothers? This is when I didn't know. I was too young to like. One, everything was real, and two, if you kind of look similar, you're related to me. So I used to think that they were kind of brother and brother, and then I kind of grew up and realized, oh no, they have nothing to do with each other. And there's like two Ultimate Warriors, and this is very convoluted. But that's the Von Erich name is right up there with in terms of in wrestling a famous name as Hart and Flair and stuff like that. So him being on this list makes sense.
All right, let's go to another new entrant into the countdown. Another female that's going to make this part of the countdown, coming in at number 88. She once went by the ring name of Miss Congeniality or Angelica, but she was also trained by Dory Funk Jr., El Dandy, Ricky Santana, and Kevin Quinn. Made a debut in 1998. Most people know that she started off a little bit in ECW. We know her mostly by the name Lita. So Lita comes in here at 88 on the countdown. That's where she would plug in. She was voted the Feud of the Year in 2005 by Pro Wrestling Illustrated with Edge versus Matt Hardy, and being involved in that. She was voted Woman of the Year in 2001. She was the WWF or WWE Women's Champion 4 times and inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2014. We'll start with DJ Lita coming in here at number 88. What do you think? And if you remember, the other females that we talked about so far in this section of the countdown now would be AJ Lee, Trish Stratus, Nia Jax.
Nia Jax,
yeah. And of course, the fabulous Moolah. So what do you think of Lita joining that group?
She was one of the first ones I've ever seen do high-flying lucha stuff as a female wrestler, and it kind of ruined it for me because now every time I see a Marvel movie and Black Widow does some kind of move, I'm like, yeah, it's the move Lita used to do when I was younger.
Before.
And she brought thongs back, so Lita was kind of. But no, I really like Lita, her affiliation with the Hardy Boys, and they were doing crazy stuff. The only thing with Lita is that you get that mic in front of her. it's downhill from there. Just keep doing them sentons and Hurricane Ranas, because if you get next to a mic, that was what separated her and like a Trish Stratus did for me, is where Trish had my skills and she could wrestle, where Lita was exceptional wrestler but could not talk a lick. But yeah, Lita is, she's Hall of Fame, kind of. Is she in the Hall of Fame? I'm not even sure. Is she a Hall of Fame wrestler?
Yeah. I feel like she
WWE.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, that era, she just screamed, her and the Hardy Boys just screamed the Attitude Era when I was actually like really, really deep into wrestling. And when I was playing SmackDown on my PlayStation, I would grab Lita and do the moves.
Yes, Matthew, what do you think of Lita joining the group, and where does she rank amongst those other females that we talked about?
I think wrestling acumen higher than, I think between her and AJ Lee are probably the two best wrestlers so far, female wrestlers on the list right now. The only thing is that AJ Lee could actually talk and make you believe what she was saying, whereas Lita was like, it's like, look, can I just slide under the sheets here with Edge? I don't really want to talk to anybody right now. I don't know, but I always liked her look. I don't know. Maybe I just have a thing for like kind of like the goth chick look or something like that too. Maybe it's just a personal preference I have. But she would take bumps and bumps and bumps, and you would not really have. I mean, I don't know, like the new Diva Revolution or whatever you want to call it now, like people like Sasha Banks. I mean, they take some pretty good bumps, but I mean, she was taking, the Dudley boys going through tables with them, and he was involved in some interesting feuds and but man, I mean, everybody hated her too near the end of her tenure, and then when they did the whole thing with Crime Time with the yeast infection pads, like her send off, she lost. I was like, God damn! I was like, this is reach. I mean, they go for the low, but you look back at it, you look at it now, it's like, that's cringy, but it's kind of funny. It's so fucked up, but it's funny at the same time. I don't really know, but I like Lita. She did things that nobody else was doing from a female wrestler perspective. Maybe in Mexico, I wasn't really watching a lot of lucha libre wrestling in Mexico or anywhere else, but to American audience, it was pretty damn dope with the Hardys. So yeah,
absolutely. TV's Mr. Neal, any thoughts on Lita before we move on to the next one that we forgot to talk about last week?
WWF, always classy. It would have been a crime. It would have been a total crime for her to not be on this list because of how much she meant to women's wrestling. Like I said last week, she and Trish main evented a Raw at a time when women's wrestling was still in the bra and panty era. So that was kind of a win from the future when that happened, and it was a good main event. It would have been a total. Just wouldn't have been right for her to not be on this list.
I always view her as kind of almost a link between the old way that women were presented on WWE compared to what we have now. Like, I feel like she wasn't quite, just the supermodel pinup girl that they were bringing in and chauffeuring around like back with Sunny and Sable and things of that nature. But she was still part of some of those kind of not too classy segments as well. So it was kind of like a borderline, but she was physical enough where it kind of transitioned into, hey, she can do a lot of stuff that the guys can do, so to speak. So I always kind of view her as like a link of one era to another in a way. But from here on, we are going to kind of go almost in order because the next two that we were missing would have been 77 and 76 now. So that will take us right into number 75, which is where we should have started. So let's start with number 77. Did not get talked about last week and should have. These names are all going to give it away because this guy was known by about 100 names and they're going to be familiar to everybody. So the Cannonball Kid, the Kamikaze Kid,
yes,
the Lightning Kid, the 1, 2, 3 Kid, Six Pack, X-Pac. I don't care what you want to call him. His real name's Sean Waltman, and he's number 77 on our countdown. Matthew Stewart, a member of a lot of different factions, I guess you could say, with Degeneration X, the Click, $1 Million Corporation, etc. Debuted in 1989 and then spent a lot of time in wrestling. What do you think about him coming in here at number 77?
First thing I want to say, when he early days when he was just known as the Kid and everything, like the mullet he was rocking. We didn't have another sub list for mullets in wrestling as well too.
Ducky Waterfall, baby.
Oh, so good. But I always remember when he beat Razor Ramon, and it was a surprise. Razor Ramon, and I remember Razor Ramon's face when he lost. He was like, "What happened?" And then after
that was a great storyline.
It was fantastic, and then they became friends, and then he screwed Razor Ramon over, and then eventually they all left and went to WCW and became NWO. I mean, he's as a single wrestler, he was always very exciting because he did a lot of, really cool high flying things. And then he I don't know, I guess he could talk. But he also wore blackface once too, so that wasn't very good.
So did Triple H. So did all.
Yeah, everybody pretty much in that entire. Yikes. Yeah, like again, pretty classy WWF, but that was Attitude Era. So whatever, we all accept it as it is now. But he was always good. Bronco Buster was a good move, and his other finishing move, whatever that was called, was cool. And I don't know, he had a lot of energy, and I don't know, I always liked him. I liked him in a sex tape too. So, man,
the men's sex tape mentioned number one. All right, WCW Cruiserweight Champion one time, WCW World Tag Team Champion one time with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, WWF European Champion twice, Light Heavyweight twice, Cruiserweight once, Tag Champions with Marty Jannetty, Bob Holly, and twice with Kane. He got a Slammy Award in 1994 for the biggest heart. That's cool. He also was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Just inducted into the Hall of Fame this year as a member of Degeneration X. DJ, what do you think is Sean Waltman's place in this countdown and in kind of history of wrestling?
Of all the members of Degeneration X, other than Triple H and I guess Shawn Michaels, I think he, in terms of his in-ring singles career, I would put him up there. I heard you guys talking about Billy Gunn and last show and Road Dogg. X-Pac was doing stuff before there was Degeneration X, when he did, like Matt was talking about the Razor Ramon thing. And I remember when he came back and he was shooting on WWE and all that stuff. And it was just like, whoa, this is not the X-Pac I grew up with. What's going on here? But yeah, he's in that era. That era was when I was deep into wrestling, where I would watch it every week, and I'd check the blogs and all that stuff. I want to know where these guys are going to go the next time. X-Pac was there. I never really liked when he teamed with Kane, though. I never liked that team. Something about that never worked with me. I don't understand that. But yeah, even when they got inducted Degeneration X, even though you can see him reading his lines or whatever, but he's still, in terms of comedy, that clique, that unit is just so good together. So yeah, X-Pac, it makes that unit work. So yeah, he deserves to be here.
I know he's often talked about too as being one of the most integral parts of the Monday Night Wars, as far as when he went back to WWF and kind of swinging the tide and kind of showing some stuff there and being very important in that movement and kind of getting WWE back to the top of the ratings. But TV's Mr. Neal, what do you think of X-Pac, Syxx, Sean Waltman, however you know him best, coming in here at 77?
Excellent. If you want a good time, check out some of his pre-WWF stuff when he was the Lightning Kid. Such a cocky little shit heel. He was awesome. And when he came to WWF, it was a total inversion. He was like, "Oh, golly gee, Mr. Ramon, I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't know if I want to do this rematch." And then he like runs away with the money, which was hilarious. I can't really say much else about him. Other than I did like him in the NWO. He wasn't around. I think he was around for like a year and a half or so, and then he jumped ship back to WWF, and then somebody coined the phrase X-Pac heat to describe him, because after a while he just became more annoying than anything else. And the less said about X Factor, the better.
Is he like a proto Daniel Bryan, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree that he's a little bit weak on the mic, but his in-ring skills were pretty good, and he, by association with the NWO and the Degeneration X, he was pretty important for that time period for sure. All right, so one more that we did not get a chance to talk about last week that we need to correct to now. This would be number 76. He was known as the names Ali Vasari. Anybody? The Great Hussein Arab? Colonel Mustafa?
Okay. Yes.
Or mostly known as just the good old Iron Sheik. So the Iron Sheik comes in here at number 76. I don't know if he made more of a name for himself after his in-ring career or not, but spent some time in WWF from 1983 to about 1988, and then kind of bounced around here, there, and everywhere else, made some sporadic appearances. As far as gold, he was the World Heavyweight Champion one time, Tag Team Champion one time with Nikolai Volkov, and inducted into the Hall of Fame for WWE in 2005. TV's Mr. Neal, Iron Sheik. Have you watched all of his YouTube videos and interviews since then? Is he worthy of being here at number 76?
He's made me humble, I'll say that.
Grateful on Twitter.
He interesting. Not really what I think of when I think of stellar wrestling. Was very important to pushing another major babyface in the early 80s. I just can't remember his name. I'm sure it'll come to me.
Some guy.
Yeah, just some guy, may have run the territory for a decade or so. I don't know. But yeah. Well, one thing I have to mention is his run as Colonel Mustafa. The whole time I'm like, are we supposed to not know that he's the Sheik? Because I still remember that. They never mentioned it. Except for like one time,
khaki outfit. Never know.
Except for like one time, Roddy Piper just slipped it in at SummerSlam. But other than that, they just never acknowledged it.
Yeah. They tried to act like we weren't smart back in the day, but, it happens. Yeah. So I'm just going to go do a quick run through of this is what the order would have been through 176, and then we're going to carry on with 75. So we would have gone with 100, Big Boss Man, then Kerry Von Erich, then AJ Lee, Bubba Ray Dudley, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Tully Blanchard, Trish Stratus, Gorgeous George, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Nia Jax, Ken Shamrock, Haku, Lita, Samoa Joe, Vern Gagne, Junkyard Dog, Tito Santana, The Great Muta, JBL, Sid, Ultimo Dragon, Fabulous Moolah, Badass Billy Gunn, Sean Waltman, and Iron Sheik. So that should have been 100 through 76. So that brings us back to reality. Number 75 on the countdown. Interested to see who can speak to this gentleman and what you all know about him. I'm not very well versed, but it is also the first entrance in our top 100 that actually appeared in somebody's top 10. So this is the first top 10 member to be revealed. Ring names. How about Kazimoto, the Kamikaze, Little Tokyo, Tokyo Tom, bunch of them I can't name, Kanji Inoki, Killer Inoki, or just Antonio Inoki. Trained by Ricky Dozan and Carl Gotch, made his debut in 1960. It says he retired in 1998. Again, that's being nice. So Antonio Inoki, obviously a big star in New Japan from almost like 1970s all the way through the end of the century there, it seems like. So Antonio Inoki shows up here. Matthew, have you ever seen an Antonio Inoki match, and do you know who he is?
The name rings a bell because I know he had some history also with Andre the Giant, I believe, when Andre, I think, was doing a lot of New Japan or wrestling in Japan. Maybe not New Japan, but just wrestling in Japan. And he ran the territory, I believe. I think he was a major part of it. I can't wax poetic on his achievements, but the name, you always hear Antonio Inoki, and I always find it weird that his name's Antonio and he's Japanese. So maybe that's the thing I know. I realized the most about him, like, Antonio.
It's not his real name.
Okay, I know, but at the same time, it's like, well, why
pretty sure he's Italian.
Antonio?
Oh, actually, it's interesting because his real name also still does not sound Japanese. He was born in Yokohama, Japan. His real name is Mohammed Hassan Inoki.
Okay, see, this is even more confusing. I mean, Mohammed is like one of the most widely used names in the entire world, as we know. Super bad, of course, but at the same time, Mohammed Inoki? I mean, come on. I don't know. It's like the guy goes to Italy once, and he's like, oh,
Antonio. Some interesting stuff here in New Japan Wrestling as far as who he was involved with. He had tag team. It says MSG Tag League. I don't know if that means that they won some type of tag championship or not, but he's listed with Bob Backlund. He's listed with Hulk Hogan, a guy named Tatsumi Fujinami, and Ricky Choshu and Kentaro Hoshino. I'm sorry I'm pronouncing all of those wrong, but some interesting times there in New Japan for sure. He's been inducted into a lot of Hall of Fames, including the WCW Hall of Fame in 95 and the WWE Hall of Fame in 2010. Was also voted the Promoter of the Year in 2001 and inducted into the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame in 96. DJ, is Antonio Inoki worthy of being mentioned here in our top 100?
Is he the guy that fought Muhammad Ali? I think he fought Muhammad Ali, and this is probably the only thing I've ever seen him do, if that's the same guy.
I think
Muhammad Ali, I'm pretty sure I think it's the same guy that fought Muhammad Ali. If not, I apologize, but I think that Muhammad Ali fought a Japanese wrestler.
Yes, he did.
I have seen this match, which is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. Just imagine Muhammad Ali fighting a guy on his back is all I remember. So yeah, I guess just because you were in the ring with Muhammad Ali, you deserve to be on the list. So yeah, put him on the list. Go ahead.
The bout ended in a draw. So,
see, he drew Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time. He has to be on the list.
Say that. Yeah.
Who can say that? Who can say that?
TV's Mr. Neil, we've had a few international stars show up, obviously, here with Ultimo Dragon and the Great Muda. How do you feel about Inoki showing up here as well?
I can't really say much about it because I'm not familiar with this guy. I know the face. I've seen the face, and I think I recognize him from the Virtual Pro Wrestling series on N64, which we know as the WCW versus NWO, and then later the WWF WrestleMania 2000 games. Right. I don't think he made the American versions. He may have under a different name, but I don't really remember.
Muhammad Hassan of Noki.
Tried looking it up. It's convoluted. I don't know. But I'm really not familiar with the guys wrestling.
Alter Muhammad Hassan Antonio Inoki.
He did help train. He helped train Masahiro Chono. He also helped train Bryan Adams, which most of us know as Crush, back in the day. So a lot of other wrestlers too. I just don't know how many our listeners will be familiar with. So
I wish he trained the singer Bryan Adams. That'd have been even better. That's another accolade.
All right, so Antonio Inoki starts us off here at number 75. We do not need to talk about number 74 because we already talked about him last week, and that would be none other than Barry Windham. So we will just skip past Barry Windham, seek last week's episode to find our comments about him. So let's move on right into our number 73 with a little more international flair here. Let's see what kind of ring names we can get for this gentleman. How about Fuji Yamada? How about CTU Ranger Yellow?
All right.
To you, Jack Bauer?
Kaichi Yamada? Kaishin Liger?
Oh.
Or just Jushin Thunder Liger? He made a debut in 1984. Obviously spent some time, actually in All-Star Wrestling, Stampede Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, into the WWE, into WCW, Ring of Honor, TNA, and some other lucha organizations. So a lot of travels for Liger here. I'm going to go through some of the stuff that we had as far as WCW. He was a light heavyweight champion one time. Didn't end up having any belts in WWE, but did have quite a few things, especially in New Japan. TV's Mr. Neil, are you familiar with Jushin Liger, and what do you think of him coming in the list as well?
I remember him mostly from WCW. Unfortunately, in retrospect, all of those luchadors / Japanese wrestlers, they kind of lumped them all together in the cruiserweight division, and they kind of all blend together. They're just like all the flippy guys. And I do remember him. He had one of the cooler masks, and I think he has the distinction of being the first Nitro match with oh my God, I can't remember the guy's name now.
I know he had a feud with Brian Pillman right away. I don't know if that would have been one of
Brian. It was Brian Pillman, yes.
Okay.
So that's really all I can recall at the moment.
So, DJ, what do you think about Jushin Thunder Liger?
What if a Power Ranger and Ultraman made love to a volcano? That's Jushin Thunder Liger. I just remember. I think he was a creative player in one of the play. I only remember him from video games. I don't remember. I've never seen him wrestle up close. And I also remember going, that is the craziest. He looks like a Power Ranger, but that's the craziest mask I've ever seen. And it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's very pointy. Don't wear that. But yeah, I mean, I have a blind spot when it comes to New Tokyo and, some of the Luchis. But yeah, Jushin Thunder Liger, I just remember the outfit, which was like, wow. You're making Ric Flair look bashful with that outfit.
That was my favorite part about all the cruiserweights in WCW was all the different outfits and costumes and masks and capes and different things that they had on. But Matthew, did you ever remember watching him against Brian Pillman in WCW or any of his other ventures?
Not Brian Pillman, but I mean, like Neil said, he kind of got lumped in with all the other cruiserweight luchador wrestlers.
Viano 4 and 5,
Viano
and
4
La Parca and Psychosis.
Psychosis. I love Psychosis, or Chavo Guerrero Jr. And then you had who was the pumpkin guy? Wasn't like a
pumpkin guy?
I don't remember the
there was a
Michael
guy,
Myers.
That was Dean Malenko in a disguise.
It was Dean Malenko. It was
the Great Pumpkin.
The Great Pumpkin, Charlie. But I remember. I think he not too long ago he fought Will Ospreay. I feel in some match, and it was like an awesome match, like high flying. I think it was Will Ospreay. It could have been somebody else, but it's funny being like he's been in the game for what now 35 years or something like that. So I don't know when he started. So let's say he started when he was 16 or 18 or something like that. The guy's pushing 50, and he's still out there wrestling. 25-year-olds and stuff. So I don't know. I always liked his outfit too. He looked kind of like DJ said, Ultraman. And if like Ultraman and a Power Ranger made love while Rita Repulsa watched
and filmed it
and watched it, and then Lord Zed was like in the corner like doing.
Oh my god!
Getting 8mm with a vision light.
8mm lighter.
Oh my god! All right, let's move on before we go down that road any further.
He wore it. We didn't do it.
So you guys know and are aware, when we have a tie, the first tiebreaker is who appeared on more people's lists, and then if they both appeared on the same amount of lists, it's who the highest that he got ranked overall. So we had a tie here, but the winner of the tie the loser, I guess, of the tie that's going to come in here at number 72 next. It's funny, we just talked about Antonio Inoki and Yushin Liger. Let's talk about another. No, he's not actually Japanese, but went by the name of Kokina Maximus, or the Great Kokina, when he was in the AWA, or the Wild Samoan Kokina. But once he got to the WWF, they named him Yokozuna. Rodney Agatupu, I can't say his name, but he's another one of our Samoans that is making the countdown here. He debuted in 1984, spent about 6 or 7 years in the AWA, which I want to go back and dig up some of that footage because I don't ever remember watching any of that. So made his debut in WWF in 1992. He was the third fastest newcomer after Brock Lesnar and Sheamus to win the WWF or WWE championship after his debut. As far as gold goes, WWF Tag Team Champion twice with Owen Hart, World Heavyweight Champion twice, WWE Hall of Fame in 2012. What do you guys think of Yokozuna, starting with TV's Mr. Neal?
Watching him back in the day, especially looking back at it now, is kind of uncomfortable just because you're like, oh my God, this guy's not going to be around very long. Just looking at the size of the guy. It was really surprising for him to win the WWF title when he did, because it was at WrestleMania, when no heel had ever won the title at that event ever before. And of course, knowing who was coming back on that day, we really should have known better what was about to happen. But unfortunately, that's really where his accolades end, is that WWF run after he won the title back from Hogan, of course. Him going up against Luger and then Undertaker, and then losing the title, just kind of like faded away very quickly. Did have a tag team with Owen Hart. I do remember that. Was part of one of my favorite Raw matches when he and Owen lost the title to the Smoking Guns again. You really have to watch the end of that match because I think it's hilarious. It's one of the better heel teammate hits his own partner moments I've ever seen. It's really hilarious. That's all I really got to say about him now.
The amount of money that WWF or WWE spent to try to get this guy help when it came to weight and when it came to health is staggering. They did a lot. They tried to send him to all kinds of different hospitals, universities, had studies done and everything to try to help him out. And he seemed like he was pretty resistant to it, based on what most people say. But obviously, has a very famous wrestling family. Alpha and Sika are his uncles. The Usos are his first cousins once removed. He's also got relations to Roman Reigns, Rikishi, Samu, Rosie, Umaga, and The Rock. DJ, what do you think of Yokozuna, and is 72 a good spot for him?
I would think so. I mean, this was one of the first wrestlers that I thought was like, when I saw him, I was like, how do you beat that guy? I remember him fighting The Undertaker, And I'm like, wow, how do you beat? I mean, he how much did he weigh? It has to be north.
At his death, it was 580.
I mean, do you understand how that? And he wasn't Big Show height. He must have been what? Maybe 6'2", 6'3". That's a big man. So I just understand. That's where the realism kind of started creeping in my brain. Like, you can't move this man if he doesn't want to be moved. You can't.
He could barely move himself.
Barely move himself. He's like, it's like fighting a tractor trailer for real. So yeah, but Yokozuna, that's the red and I remember the red and black trunks. I remember making him in SmackDown game because he was just one of those wrestlers up there with the earthquake, and I was like, how do you beat somebody that big? So yeah, he needs to be underfoot.
It's like when he got into the Royal Rumble or whatever. You're like, well, that's the winner.
Yeah, you can't move. If he climbs up the steps, the game is over.
Yeah.
Matthew, any thoughts on Yokozuna and is 72 a good spot in your mind?
I think for memorability, yes, because I mean he also had Mr. Fuji helping him too, and everybody hated Mr. Fuji, so he had a great heel manager throwing rice in people's eyes, or throwing the salt in people's eyes. And
rice or salt? Please tell me it was salt.
It wasn't a wedding, so it had to have been salt.
Okay,
it was definitely salt.
Get a face full of rice. What the hell?
No!
Jesus, WWF! Come on, man.
But two memories I have of him. The first one is when he did I think he did the bonsai drop to Jim Duggan, I think like 5 times. And I remember watching that as a kid, like a big, large man just crushing Jim Duggan. And then Jim Duggan was actually spitting blood out of his mouth.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then he took his American flag and put it over him. I was like, oh my God.
He murdered him.
He murdered this American hero of mine. And then, of course, when Lex Luger slammed him on the USS Constitution, whatever thing it was.
Toss.
When he came down the helicopter and he slammed him, yeah, Lex Express, whoa! So, but then it was sad, you know.
That went well, by the way.
Yeah, the Lex Express really worked really hard. Everybody was Express. But
Lex Express that Lex Luger was not even on.
No,
OSW is doing a great series of that right now.
Oh, Lex Luger, the narcissist.
It was probably one of those gentlemen, like Yokozuna. I mean, as far as, you know, if he would have been around longer or had some more longevity, maybe creeps his way up higher on the countdown. But obviously, a fairly short run compared to some of the other people we've been talking about, or that we will talk about later, I'm guessing. So, something that might have cost him in the voters' minds. So, another person that might have fallen down a little bit due to a lack of longevity is our next entrant, which actually tied with Yokozuna, broke the tiebreaker and comes in here at number 71. I believe all these names are going to give it away, so I assume that you guys are going to get this before I say it, but he was known as the Yellow Dog. That might be the only one that doesn't come up familiar with people. The Loose Cannon, Hollywood Blonde, Flying Brian. We're talking about Brian Pillman. Another wrestler whose career was cut short, unfortunately, debuted in 1986, trained by Stu Hart. Obviously, good pedigree there. A lot of time in Jim Crockett Promotions with WCW/NWA. He was a WCW light heavyweight champion twice, world tag team champion with Steve Austin for both the WCW and the NWA. He was the United States tag team champion in NWA with Tom Zink. WCW light heavyweight champion, if I didn't say that already, and he's in the Canadian Wrestling Hall of Fame, got inducted there in 2016. The Stampede Wrestling Hall of Fame, was voted Rookie of the Year in the Wrestling Observer in 1987, was voted the Tag Team of the Year in 93 with Steve Austin as the Hollywood Blondes. Got a 5-star match in 1991 with Sting, the Steiner Brothers versus Ric Flair, Larry Zbyszko, Barry Windham, and Sid Vicious at Wrestle War. And was voted the Feud of the Year in 1997 with Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Jim Neidhart, and Davey Boy Smith against Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just one other name on the other side. So I like that it's like 6 against 1 as the Feud of the Year. But TV's Mr. Neal, what do you think about Brian Pillman coming in here at 71?
Austin 316 meets Brian Pillman 9mm.
Would wrestling had balls?
I just remember. What was funny about that was that it was WWF still kind of tiptoeing very carefully into the Attitude Era, so they really weren't ready to acknowledge that it was the guns. They're like, oh, there are explosions inside the house. We don't know what's going on.
Somebody left the oven on.
Yeah, they didn't want to say gunshot.
Yeah.
But otherwise, that oh my God, that was hilarious. I do remember him from WCW mostly, because I was kind of more on the WCW side when he went to WWF. So I remember him as the part of the Hollywood Blondes when he was still kind of a high flyer. I understand he changed his style completely by the time he left. So I don't remember. I really have no memory of him in WWF.
Unfortunately, he was almost hurt immediately when he got into the WWF. It seemed like he was not around for a long time before he was injured. Some people might not know this. This should also be a sub list of the number of people that we talk about in this top 100 that also had an NFL career or at least appeared on an NFL roster at one point. He appeared on the Bengals in 1984 and the Bills, at least in the preseason in 1985. Here's an interesting note here. Pillman and John Harbaugh, the current head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, were actually roommates in college. So I didn't know that. But DJ, what do you think about Brian Pillman showing up here?
Just imagine that conversation. Because John Harbaugh, if you ever seen an interview with him, is the most boring man on the planet. But all right.
And Brian Pillman is not.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, what's going on, man? Oh, no, I just want to talk about football.
That's probably why he's the way he is.
It's Belichick 2.0. I never saw Brian Pillman wrestle. I remember hearing the name, and I guess he looking at him, he's kind of like got the Raven look. He's got the scraggly, blonde hair, and that era I got a lot of blind spots for that too. It's like when Stone Cold had hair and stuff like that. I did not.
The Hollywood blonde era. Yeah,
I did.
So weird.
It's weird looking at. He tweeted out a picture of himself recently to The Rock where he had hair in a fanny pack. I'm like, you don't look right. But no, Brian Pillman was this. I've always heard the name. I wish I would have seen him wrestle. I guess I can just go down a YouTube black hole rabbit hole and check out some of his old matches. But yeah, never got to see him wrestle, but I've always heard the name.
Matthew Stewart, any thoughts on Brian Pillman?
I remember his moniker in WCW when he was not really. I mean, I seeing him as a singles wrestler was cool. I never really got into the Hollywood Blondes thing, and then of course when he went into WWF and got hurt, he didn't wrestle. He was more just a mouthpiece. He was like the crazy part of the Hart Foundation, and then of course the just Stone Cold going to his house and Brian Pillman's going to shoot him with a gun. And it's like, oh, we had to cut the commercial. It's not even cutting the commercial. It was like, oh, the show ended or the feed died while somebody might have gotten murdered in somebody's house. I mean, it was just such an odd time because, that was the beginning of – because was that pre or was that post Austin 316? I feel like it was right around that
the same time.
Yeah. And I always remember very vividly the shirt he would always wear of like – it looked like a big skull on his shirt with like an eyeball, but it was like an eyeball hanging from us. I don't know. His fashion was more important to me than his wrestling because he didn't do any wrestling in WWF. But another guy who just died way too young. Just having problems. Addiction problems. So didn't really get to see a lot of him because he wasn't around that long. So that was unfortunate.
But apparently, if you do look into some of his early WCW stuff, he is way beyond his time as far as some of the stuff he was able to do in the ring, as far as what I've heard. Let's move.
Kid levels,
yeah. So let's move on to our number 70 on the list. If you were to tell me that we were going to have someone on our top 100 list that was trained by Lodi, who was a member of Raven's flock, I wouldn't have put in much stock in that because I didn't even think he was a good wrestler to begin with. I didn't know he was training anybody. But this is our 6th female on the top 100 countdown. We're going to somebody who was once known as Ashley. That's because that's her real name, but she goes by Charlotte nowadays. So Charlotte Flair is our number 70. Debuted in 2012, one of the more recent people that is going to be on our countdown here. WWE Raw Women's Champion 4 times, SmackDown Women's Champion 4 times. Hasn't had a whole lot of time to do much else than that. Feud of the Year in 2016, according to PWI, with Sasha Banks. Rookie of the Year 2014. DJ, you said wow, so let's go to you first. What do you think of Charlotte Flair being number 70?
After like The Rock kind of left WWE, I kind of left, and the thing that got me back was the Becky Lynch attacking Raw, and the Nia Jax breaking her face stuff. And at that time, Becky Lynch was doing this thing with Charlotte and all of their stuff, and I was kind of like on the periphery. And then when they got to the Ronda Rousey Charlotte Becky match, I actually got to like sit down and watch Charlotte wrestle for like the first time, and I mean, she might be one of the best wrestlers in the company right now. Like, I don't care, man, woman. Like, if you watch that match again, and Becky is the biggest one that's over because of, the way they're writing her and her attitude and what she's carrying. But in terms of in-ring ability, Charlotte Flair is a beast. Like, I never thought that she does like these moves, and it's like she's snapping the suplexes like I've seen Eddie Guerrero snap a suplex. She's doing the figure 4 leg lock with the bridge. I mean, Charlotte Flair is awesome, and she's a fantastic heel. So good. Mm-hmm. I mean, if she got anything from her father, is that. But no, her in-ring ability. Just watch her when if you see her wrestle with other women, and Becky is great. I love Becky. She's probably one of my favorites right now. But I would put Charlotte above her in-ring ability in terms of making moves. Sometimes you watch women wrestling and it's a little clumsy because they're not used to doing it. But you can tell Charlotte's been doing this for a minute, or at least she's been around it her whole freaking life because her father is one of the greatest of all time. She is awesome. And she's a total package wrestler. And in terms of women's wrestling, I would put her really, really high. This is kind of low for me for her. I would probably put her in the top 50.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who, when all is said and done, who you guys think should be, as far as when the women go, who should be the highest and how high they should have gotten. TV's Mr. Neal, what do you think of Charlotte being here at number 70?
Well, I have to say that modern day wrestling is kind of in the periphery for me, so I'm not terribly familiar with her. Although, like DJ said, seeing her wrestle 1 or 2 matches, particularly the one at WrestleMania, she definitely appears to be one of the better wrestlers on the roster right now. I do have to give a shout out to she and Becky kind of antagonizing each other on Twitter. I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh, that was real good.
So good, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Matthew, what do you think of Charlotte being here?
I mean, she hasn't had a lot of time. I mean, we talk about other female wrestlers who were on. I would say her and AJ Lee probably have had the most, like the similar amount of time. Not a lot of time. It's only been about 7 years for her, and AJ was only really around for about maybe 5 years, 4 years or something like that. But she was also in a completely different era where her style was kind of like, yeah, we don't really care that you can wrestle or anything like that, but can you look good on TV, kid? But I mean, she's also not been one that's been really on the. I don't watch Total Divas, now. I have in the past, but don't judge me for that. But she's always been. I mean, yeah, but like to DJ's point, great talker on the mic. People hate her. People either love her. If she's a face, people buy into that.
People are starting to come all over on her now because she's going against a heel. Bailey's now a heel, and they're kind of rivaling against her. But like
Bailey's
you're saying,
a heel now.
Yes, Bailey's a heel now.
Oh, okay, I'm really going to buy that one. Okay.
I do really like the idea of eventually. I wish that it will happen. I don't know if it will or not, but the whole 4 horsemen of the women 4 horsemen against the 4 horsemen of MMA with Ronda Rousey and some of the people in NXT. I think that would be a fantastic stable feud.
It would, but they would kill. But the WWE ones, because Ronda Rousey, I don't know if she's on this list, so if I'm crapping on her, I'm sorry. She doesn't translate as well in WWE as I thought. I think people thought she would in terms of even wrestling ability, because it's mostly she's just throwing people around. Charlotte has like when she does moves, these are
she's a good worker too.
She's a great worker. I mean, of all the technique wise, she's just very, very good. Way better than I would think in terms of like Sasha Banks, who's great, or Becky, who's great. But she's like her stuff is polished. That's why I would put her up there.
And to be fair, Ric Flair did do some training with her as well. It wasn't
her
just
dad is the best.
All right. Let's move on to number 69, back-to-back women as far as entrants go here. So 69 is going to be another female wrestler. I love how the internet lists retirement dates for these people because honestly, all they have to do is they could be out of the business for 10 years, and if they show up and do one match somewhere, all of a sudden that's their new retirement date. So debut in 1995. Technically, I guess it says that she retired in 2011. I think it would be much closer to 2002. And not a lot of different ring names unless you just choose the Just Joni name, but most people know her as Chyna. Stable of Degeneration X, obviously made a lot of first for women when it came into wrestling. WWF Intercontinental Champion twice, WWF Women's Champion once, inducted into the Hall of Fame just this year with Degeneration X. I'm going to get your guys' thoughts on Chyna, but then I'm also going to get your guys' thoughts on different stables or families and how that's all going to shake out. I mean, we've just talked about Billy Gunn and Sean Waltman, and now Chyna. Obviously, there's some more members of Degeneration X that I think most people would expect to see. We have stables like the Four Horsemen. We have the Samoan family, the Hart family. Who's going to reign supreme with the most members? And how do you feel as far as Chyna coming in at number 69? And does she deserve to be above the likes of the other female wrestlers we've talked about so far? Starting with you, Matthew Stewart.
This is an interesting one because when she first came in the scene, she was just some big Amazonian bodyguard basically for Triple H and for Shawn Michaels. And then when you actually saw her wrestle, I mean, it was more like a bruising style. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it's as polished as Charlotte, because I think Charlotte has a much more polished look. But she was the one that was breaking down the barriers, where it's like, hey, I'm making room to make sure that all you ladies can fight later on down the line and maybe take it pretty seriously. And then when she was putting the work to Jeff Jarrett. I know that's DJ's favorite, but still, doing the matches with him, that was pretty cutting edge at the time too. With, I mean, you could always see stuff like that in Japan, where women fighting men and things like that. But this was on worldwide stage, where you had a formidable woman fighting a guy who was basically treating her like shit too, which was the worst slap in the face of what he was doing to her. So it was important for that, the movement of women in wrestling. And it sucks, she got involved in a lot of crazy stuff and probably drugs and everything else that happened with her. But man, I mean, the ninth wonder of the world, man. If you don't see another woman on this list, I wouldn't be angry,
Another thing that's interesting is when, the era that she wrestled in, that she was able to do the stuff that she did. Because like we talked about, that was not an era where women were being necessarily respected in the ring. They weren't doing a lot of the actual physical stuff. It was more just, for the looks and the TNA type stuff. But she was able to kind of overcome all of that and actually do stuff in the ring from a physical standpoint, which is definitely ahead of her time from, she would have fitted right in now, but she had to do that back when that wasn't an accepted thing. So I think that maybe she should get some credit for being able to kind of go up against those types of odds too. DJ, what do you think?
I agree with you. all the other ladies, when they took a bump, you could almost see that
wait.
Even the wrestlers, when they're delivering them, they would not deliver them fully.
Right.
But with Chyna, it was like she was just like everybody else. She would take a stunner like anybody else, take a pedigree like anybody, every move, and you didn't get that welling up because she was a powerhouse and a trailblazer, as Matt's talking about. So yeah, again, the thing about Degeneration X, for some reason, it's just when they split off, it's good. It's just it doesn't feel as good as when they're together. When they're together, they're upper echelons, so it's kind of hard for me to judge Chyna. Do I judge her on when she was just the bodyguard with Triple H, or do I judge her when they kind of had her come out with the fire cannons and all that other stuff? I think I prefer her when she was just the brute strength. She's essentially the muscle of Degeneration X.
Yeah,
so that's sure. That was pretty awesome.
She almost replaced, it was like the Rick Rude replacement, it seems like, at one point.
Yeah.
She was trained by Killer Kowalski. Build, height, and weight was 5'10" and 180. Neil, I want to get your reaction to something Matthew said, because he said, if he didn't see another woman show up on the list, he couldn't necessarily complain. Is this the last of the female wrestlers, or is there somebody that you're holding out hope for?
I'm trying to remember who was already on the list. I think there's a couple more female wrestlers I would like to be on here. Maybe Medusa, although I can't imagine Medusa being higher than China. China was. I think I'm going to speak to something DJ just said, that when she was like this big brute force, when she's just kind of like this silent bodyguard, kind of this really nasty looking, looked like she could just plow right through you if she really wanted to. That she was really amazing, and then she started talking, and it was like Lucille Ball breathed in a pound of sand, and I'm like, oh.
Lucille Ball breathed in a pound of sand.
It was like 10 times more gravelly than Bonnie Tyler. Like, oh my god!
A little V.I. Wachowski, little Kathleen Turner action there.
A little bit. But yeah, I don't like what they did with her later, where she's like coming out with the huge cannon and hanging off of Eddie Guerrero. I mean, it was funny, but it kind of went against the big silent killer character she was initially. So I really wish they would have kept her in that area where she was just like a really imposing threat and not just kind of like someone else's hanger on.
All right, so China at number 69. Let's move on to number 68. Interesting to see how many modern wrestlers we get in this countdown as well that are still doing it, and not just hanging on by a thread, but like actually still doing it. This man debuted in 2003, trained by Al Snow and Bill DeMott, who most people know as Hugh Morris from WCW days. Ring name, the Calgary Kid, or maybe just Mike Mizanin. Shorten it up and started just going by The Miz, though.
Awesome! I came to play. There's a price to pay. Time for you to get down on your knees. I came to play.
So we're talking about The Miz here at number 68. He's obviously has all of his reality shows and that type of stuff, and a whole lot of belts. WWE champion once, United States twice, Intercontinental 8 times, tag teams with John Morrison, with Big Show, with John Cena, with Damien Mizdow, SmackDown with Shane McMahon tag team, Big Show with World Tag Teams, Money in the Bank, 25th Triple Crown champion, all kinds of other stuff that we could talk about. But DJ, what do you think? Is The Miz worthy of being in the top 100? Is it too soon to rank him here, or does he deserve it?
I guess in terms of me doubting him, he could be on this list, because when I first heard the guy from the real world is going on the WWE, it's oh god, and he's a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. No, I'm not.
Oh, that's going.
Get out of here. That's no. But I mean, I've watched him his fights with Daniel Bryan and even the Shane McMahon stuff, and to see that and then go back to younger me, and when I heard he was joining WWE, I'd have never thought that would have happened, where he was actually a great performer, who's funny on the mic, who has a pretty cool gimmick, who's better as a heel WWE. As a face, he does not work. But yeah, I can see him on this list. I think his is really, really high, because I would never rank The Miz over people like Samoa Joe or something like that. Again, I'm going to hold the Samoa Joe over your head for the rest of the time. But yeah, to defy expectations as what he's done, I can see him being on this list, maybe not this high.
I did not vote him on my list. He wasn't established enough or big enough, I guess, for me to put him on the list. I guess I would have been fine with him coming in at like 95 through 100 or something like that, like sneaking in right in that section. I don't see him as number 68 overall, but apparently some people did. TV's Mr. Neil, have you had any exposure? I know you said you don't watch a lot of stuff current days, but do you know who The Miz is, and do you think he deserves a spot?
I do know who he is. When I first saw him, I was kind of getting a little bit of a David Arquette vibe. I'm like, who is this guy thinking he can like come into the world of wrestling and do things? And then like months later, I'm like, wait, he actually got good. But beyond that, I'm really not that familiar with him, so I can't really speak too much about him. Apparently, he's awesome.
Matthew, nice. Matthew, I'm saying he's not
just
deserving.
Awesome.
Matt, I'm saying he's not deserving. What do you say?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what other modern, and by modern, I'll say started out between, let's say, 2004 till current or something like that, because the way things switch around so quickly in like wrestling, where I don't know if people are going to look at like wrestling, like, you know, title reigns, and you read the title reign, it's like 8-time Intercontinental Champion.
Right.
And he probably held the belt more times than people that are way more important than him. I'm sure he held the Intercontinental Championship more than Bret Hart, you know, things like that. Does that make him more, you know, does it make him better than Bret Hart? Does it make him better than a lot of other people? That's why I don't think I voted him on my top 100. I appreciate that he's this guy who it's like, yeah, I love wrestling on the reality show, and then he became a wrestler and actually became a pretty good wrestler at that, and also a very good heel. So I appreciate that whole thing. But I don't know, it's one of these things where at a certain point, I will probably take this countdown seriously at a certain point. So I guess I'm taking it seriously now, where I'm like, I don't know about this guy. I don't know if he's top 100 material, but if you're going to judge it on title reigns and how many belts he has, sure. And he's a, you know, triple crown or whatever you want to call it, like, you know, champion with WWE. He's won every belt practically. So, I mean, if that is the barometer of what's going to make a top 100, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who is above him at this point, and I hope there's a lot more people who I'll be happy with above him, but he's fine. The Miz is fine, and he's entertaining. And
is he fine? Or is he... Speaking of, if we're just looking at the men for modern wrestlers, it's really just been Samoa Joe at 87 and Miz at 68 so far. That's the only two that are like currently a thing or at least relevant that we've talked about so far. It's interesting though, because you are right. At some point, the conversation becomes not, are they top 100 worthy? It's the changes to where should they have fallen? You know what I mean? Like, you know, how high should they have been? It's no longer, eventually gets no longer debatable whether they deserve it or not. So I don't know if we're quite there yet. Let's go on to number 67. A new member here, maybe representing what we lost when we lost Taz and Raven for the ECW group, I guess. Made his debut in 1990. Once went by the ring name of Rob Zatkowski, but most people know him as Rob Van Dam. So RVD coming in here at number 67. Long career, a lot of different places where he was at, including ECW, WCW, WWF, TNA, and stops in between, I'm sure. A lot of gold, probably too much to mention. Maybe some of the highlights here: WWE champion one time, ECW World Heavyweight champion one time, Intercontinental champion 6 times, European once. Tag team once with Rey Mysterio, World Tag Team once with Kane and once with Booker T, 7th Grand Slam champion, 15th Triple Crown champion, also known as one of the greatest matches ever for Tables, Ladders, and Chairs number 4. But what do you guys think of Rob Van Dam, starting with TVs, Mr. Neal?
Wasn't he in one of the earliest $1 Million Man sketches? He brought him in from the crowd. Wasn't that him?
Maybe.
The answer is yes. It was a rhetorical question, but yeah. But anyway, I loved Rob Van Dam. Mainly know him from his WWF run. Was not watching ECW, so I don't have that memory of him. But I did like his run in the early 2000s when he came in. In spite of being part of the Invasion, he was one of the better parts of it. Was easily the breakaway star from that because they didn't have Sting for some reason. So the next best thing was Rob Van Dam, and he was kind of like the de facto face in a heel faction. Yeah, lots of lots of belts. I didn't understand him teaming with a lot of people like Kane. I didn't get that. But the only thing I remember about that was he was in the ring when they demasked Kane, when he immediately turned heel and destroyed Rob Van Dam. I'm sure you guys have a lot more to say about him. I just don't know his ECW stuff.
I would say that for me, he's definitely worthy of being in the list. I had him real close to where he falls right now. One of those people that had the rare opportunity to be successful in ECW and in WWF, which a lot of people didn't necessarily make that transition or were relegated to like the hardcore division or something of that nature. So I like that he was actually able to elevate a little bit past that. DJ, what do you think of Rob Van Dam coming in here?
Yeah, I had watched a little bit of the ECW stuff, and when my friend had told me this guy looks just like Jean-Claude Van Damme, and he's doing frog splashes. I'm like, okay, all right. And he had these cool airbrush tights or whatnot, and again, a lot of my history in wrestling is connected to the video games. He was the one I made when we didn't have him, and he's the one I used when we did have him. And I tried to recreate the Van Daminator because you couldn't. There wasn't a move in the game. But yeah, my biggest disappointment is that when he came to WWE, he never was as awesome as we're talking about before, as he was in ECW, where he was just like the end all, the be all. Like, he had a couple of nice medium sized runs, but he was never like how he was in my mind and how I used him in the damn game, where he was like the champion of champions, all types of stuff. And in terms of in-ring ability, he's great, but man, for him to grab a mic and just to start talking like, the stoner of all stoners, which he is. He still is, as to this day. He was just on recently, and he was doing frog splashes high out of his mind. It's just disappointing. He could have been so much. He could have been somebody. He could have been somebody.
Matthew, what do you think about Rob Van Dam at number 67?
I liked him. I mean, he was one of the guys that, he couldn't really do a lot on the mic, but he let the wrestling kind of do the talking for him. I mean, and he had the fights with Sabu and ECW and all the feuds he would have. The Van Daminator was just like an awesome, like you can't do stuff like that anymore. So he was like in this era, this bubble era, where wrestling was completely awesome and amazing in violence and over the top. And he had Bill Alfonso on as his like manager all the time with a fucking whistle. God damn that whistle! Oh God, that whistle! Oh boy, it was so bad. And then he got the little run, and but he was so. I mean, I would say aside from probably Samoa Joe on this list, I'm trying to think. I'm hesitant to say who else is as over on the list so far as Rob Van Dam, because when he would come out and that music would hit, people would be like, "Yes, yes,
one of a kind,
one of a kind, yeah." And then it's like Rob Van Dam, and everybody would say it at the same time, and it was just magic at the time.
I think if we're looking at most over people, maybe like you mentioned, and maybe I would throw Junkyard Dog in there. But yeah, there hasn't been a lot of like
beloved. Like Junkyard Dog was like a beloved wrestler, but like people like they're chanting like even Sami Zayn, he's not going to make the list. I like Sami Zayn a lot. He's really over, and I like his theme song a lot. So maybe I'm a sucker for good theme songs too.
That's a key part.
I do love ska. I love ska.
All right, moving on to number 66 on our list. This man made his debut in 1995, billed from Tampa, Florida, or Toronto, Ontario, Canada, depending on which company you were talking to. Is known as Conquistador Dos, the Male Nurse, or maybe just Christian Cage.
Go! If you close your eyes, your life, and make it truth reveal. Dreams you never lived, and scars never healed. In the darkness, light will take you to the other side. Find me waiting there, you'll see if you just close your eyes. If you just close your eyes.
So Christian coming in here at number 66. Obviously, most of his career has been most known for WWE, WWF. Also spent some time, though, in TNA and New Japan, as well as a couple other independent leagues. A lot of gold, just like a lot of the other people we're talking about. ECW champion twice, world heavyweight champion for 2 times, European once, hardcore once, light heavyweight once, intercontinental 4 times, tag team 9 times, 7 of them with Edge, once with Lance Storm, once with Chris Jericho. Jericho, 23rd Triple Crown champion, 11th Grand Slam champion. Christian is coming in at number 66. Go right back to you, Matt. What do you think about Christian being right here?
Christian, your time has... Talk about another guy who had... and he was such a little dick, just a little pecker. I just hated that guy. But I mean, from the time he from the time when he was playing a vampire to the time he was on his own and doing his own thing, I like Christian. He was different than Edge in some ways. He was a little bit whinier, a little bit more kind of like, man. He was kind of like a guy you can take more seriously than Raven, because he was almost like a Raven type character, always complaining and bitching about his station in life. But he always had like great matches, and I mean, great as a single wrestler. But I would just always think about Edge and Christian all together. Like they're connected at birth at this point. The two of those guys, and I like them a lot, but. I'm hoping to see his counterpart way further up the list, which I think we will. But that's my kind of general opinion of Christian. I think he's right where he needs to be. This is where we're starting to see the cream. Much of him say the cream rises to the top. We're starting to see that cream kind of get there.
DJ, agree?
I mean, if you think about the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, and Edge and Christian, when they all three of those tag teams split. Edge is probably the best of them. I guess you could say Jeff Hardy, but I would put Christian up there because Christian could wrestle and he had mic skills. The man, I how high I keep mics. You have to have the mic, man, because especially during that era, it was half of it was wrestling and half of it was behind the curtain when you're doing scenes with Mick Foley, you're doing scenes with The Rock, and you're doing scenes with Stone Cold Steve Austin or Kurt Angle. You have to be good on the mic. And Christian was very good. He might be just as good or better on the mic than Edge was. Edge was, the super babyface, but Christian was very clever. And together, that's why I love that group together, because they were just so funny. And I like watching the I think the WWE channel has that thing where they stole it from Jon Favreau, where they have dinner and they talk about their
table for three.
Yeah. And I like watching the one where I think it's Edge and Christian and Kurt Angle, and they're just talking about, or Edge and Christian and Mick Foley, and they're just talking about all the stuff that they did and whatnot. And you can just tell that a lot of those ideas were from Christian, which is like, so yeah, Christian, I like him a lot. He never really exploded. He did get some stuff, but I mean, of all of those separate, like he did better than Devon, he did better than Bubba, he did better than Matt. I would put him comparable to Jeff Hardy, and then
right. We'll have to see how that all plays out. Matt, you'll like this one. He was once, I don't know what this division is or what this championship means or who this other person is, but he was in the International Wrestling Alliance. He was the IWA Tag Team Champion one time with a partner named Earl the Orderly.
Of course. What did you say? What was one of his other things, like the wet
man nurse, which is the greatest name ever.
Nurse.
The male nurse.
I'm sure that was when he was the male nurse and Earl the Orderly. I don't know.
I mean, I like occupational gimmicks.
Occupational gimmicks, baby.
That's why I brought it up. TV Mr. Neil, what do you think of Christian coming in right here?
Well, for the benefit of those of you with flash photography.
There we go. There we go.
I really loved Christian, especially after he broke off from Edge, just because he just seemed like, well, he was supposed to be Edge's like little brother, and he just kind of seemed like this little kid brother who was always kicking around Edge, and like just I did like when they were comedy heels. I love comedy heels when they would come out and and just bag on the local sports team. I always thought it was hilarious. But when he went full heel and cut his, especially when he cut his hair, I think he's one of the few wrestlers that once they cut all that mop off, he actually ended up looking a lot better and really came out and became his own thing. Just great in-ring performer, great mic skills. Doesn't get as much credit as Edge, and I think that's kind of a shame. I think he's actually better than Edge as far as mic skills, and probably just a little bit better in the ring too.
All right,
in my opinion.
It's interesting too because we talked about tag teams and kind of how they would fare, and would one member make it? Would both members make it if they were good tag teams? And we'll have to kind of wait and see how it goes because so far we've seen Bubba Ray Dudley last week, in that episode, and now obviously we see Christian. We'll have to see how many more of those we see and how they rank compared to each other. So let's move on to 65, and I guess it's fitting that we kind of stay with a little bit of a tag team theme here. So number 65, this gentleman debuted in 1983. He was trained by Eddie Sharkey. I'm not going to be able to name any of the other ring names because he hasn't had any besides the one that we all know him by. But maybe we should talk about some of his tag team accolades. How about once the WCW World Tag Team Champion with a guy named Kenny Chaos? Or the WCW United States Tag Team Champion one time with a guy named Eddie Gilbert. I don't think that's giving it away yet. So let's give his normal tag team partner, which was the 7-time WCW Tag Team Champion with a guy named Scott Steiner. One-time U.S. Tag Team Champion with Scott Steiner. We're talking about Rick Steiner. Rex Steiner, I guess if you want to go by his real name. He was also a WWF World Tag Team Champion twice with Scott Steiner. We don't need to go too much into him. I think everybody knows who we're talking about. It's one half of the Steiner brothers. DJ, what do you think of Rick Steiner showing up here, and how does that kind of fit into the other conversation with the likes of Christian and Bubba Ray, and you were talking about maybe like the Hardys and some of these other tag teams?
I'd have never thought he'd be this high. If you had told me Scott Steiner, then yeah, because Rick Steiner, again, forgive me. I remember him when he was with Scott. I don't remember him where he was just walking around he was going solo. So him being on here is a surprise to me. I mean, great gimmick. I love the I love the wrestling thing and the dog, all that stuff. But it's just, of the two of them, if you're talking about Edge and Christian and then Scott and Rick is not even close to what the accolades Scott, unless I'm missing something. I miss some stuff.
Was a world television champion for WCW 3 times and a U.S. WWE champion one time. So I don't know what those are worth, but he's in the Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2014. It's the only one I can find though that he's in. So hasn't made it to any of these other ones yet. I don't know why. What is the WWF waiting on as far as inducting the Steiner brothers into the Hall of Fame? Like, is Scott Steiner holding that up?
I can see that being a thing, yeah.
So I don't know. But Matthew, what do you think of Rick Steiner showing up here at 65?
If I'm going to be blunt, if he's making it at 65, we're going to see Scott Steiner down the line. We have to. I wouldn't have thought twice. I wouldn't have thought 5 times that, Rick Steiner, he's going to be on the list of top 100. And where's Scott? I'd say the dog-faced gremlin, all well and good, but works as a tag team so much better. I guess I don't know. I don't see why.
Well, and I guess it could be a thing like this isn't necessarily all just about singles wrestlers. Like this isn't the top 100 single wrestlers. Right. So maybe being on a great tag team for long enough is enough to get you on the list. Maybe where they rank as opposed to their partners who maybe had more of a single career could be a different argument. But as far as being part of one of the greatest tag teams of all time, is that enough to warrant a spot on the top 100?
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know. We saw the Anvil earlier on in the countdown, but way further down the line. He never really, in my opinion, I never really saw, outside of him being Boo and things like that, never saw him do anything really substantial. Me personally, I'm sure he did a lot of other things substantially single wrestlers, but Big Papa Pump. It's if I'm going to see one part of the Steiner brothers, I want to see Scott.
Want the hookup? I got it.
I will holler if you hear me, right? All my friends out there, So we'll see if I'm seeing Rick here. We'll see Scott further down the line. I don't want to see, and even seeing Scott, if you do see Scott even further up the line, I don't want to see him too high because he's great and all, but when you start getting into like, oh man, is he top 50 or top 40 or top 30? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this kind of plays out, if it plays out.
TV's Mr. Neal, weigh in on this discussion a little bit. What do you think of Rick Steiner?
I love Rick Steiner. His gimmick is, get this, he's a wrestler.
He's
got the wrestling like normal
singlet.
Wrestling trunks. Yeah, normal singlet. Although loud colors on that singlet.
Ear guards.
Ear guards.
Yeah, I love that thing. Can't really separate him from Scotty though. I mean, great tag team, iconic tag team, the Steiner brothers. Once they broke off, I can only really think of one highlight for Rick Steiner, and it's not really a highlight because it was when Chucky was busting a promo on him on Nitro. Really, really sad.
Yeah. Well, let's just keep this train right on moving because we got another person next up that was also part of a tag team that is fairly well known. But I think you could make the argument that he was well enough known as a single wrestler as well. I'll have to get your guys' take on that. But our number 64 debuted in 1978. Was trained we could also be keeping track of how many people were trained by Stu Hart because this is another one. And we're talking about Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog. I had him ranked much higher, but that's because I've always been a huge fan of the British Bulldog. I thought he was one of the most impressive human beings I've ever seen when I was a kid. And they had plans at different times to do more with him and to even have him as a heavyweight champion. I'm sad that those never materialized and kind of other stuff got in the way for him. But I was glad that he was the one that kind of was able to outlast the Bulldogs and keep his career going a little bit because his tag team partner as the British Bulldogs, Dynamite Kid, seemed like he was a little bit crazy based on the stories and whatnot. Yeah. So a little bit crazy, but obviously spent some time in the WWF, Stampede Wrestling, All Japan Wrestling, WCW, back to WWF, etc. A lot of championships, the Intercontinental once, European twice, Hardcore twice, Tag Team twice, once with Dynamite Kid, once with Owen Hart, European Championship tournament member, World Tag Team Championship tournament member with Owen Hart. Matthew Stewart, what do you think of Davey Boy Smith and the tag teams continue here?
I'm trying to think, do I like Davey Boy Smith dreads or non-dreads?
Like the Bo Derek dreads? You like the Bo Derek dreads?
I can't figure out what I like better. I mean, it's funny. It's like one of the more memorable things I remember with British Bulldog is his mini feud he had with Repo Man as well.
Everything comes back to Repo Man with Matt.
You're the only one that would bring up Repo Man.
He was the best. Repo Man was the best. I remember he hung him off like the ropes, and it looked like he was like really choking him. And I mean, these are a lot of things when I'm a little kid, and I see this like, oh my god, wrestling is so real. He's killing somebody in the ring. But I guess the biggest thing for the British Bulldog was when he pinned Bret Hart in the middle of the ring in Wembley. What was that? I forgot what WrestleMania.
SummerSlam,
was that SummerSlam?
92.
And the story behind that is like Davey Boy Smith was like out of his mind on like a bender or something like that, and Bret had to literally. I guess this is more of a testament to how great of a performer Bret was than British Bulldog, but he did the right thing for the Bulldog at Wembley to make him basically a household name. And of course, he had, Matilda, the Bulldog coming down the ring, which was always awesome. And I liked it when he turned heel too, when he went with the New Heart Foundation. He was like the badass with the short hair and everything too. And yeah, I mean, the stuff he would do was like, this guy was a huge guy that could lift anything, was just a massive specimen. And, again, another wrestler who, way before he should have passed, but he passed too. But good, like a great legacy, and memorable as hell. So,
PWI gave that the match of the year, 92, Bret Hart at SummerSlam. Interesting here, the PWI had something called the 100 tag teams of the quote unquote PWI years, which is the main years that they were putting out stuff. He was actually ranked twice in the top 100 tag teams, at number 84 with Owen Hart and number 5 with Dynamite Kid. So that's kind of an interesting thing to be on there twice. DJ, what do you think of Davey Boy Smith, and is it his tag team moments, or is it the fact that he also had many singles runs that helps him kind of come in at number 64 here?
I'm assuming for me, it's a singles run because I remember that more than the tag team stuff. But he's a Hart, man. He came from the Hart the dungeon. Yeah. So you're gonna be if you have that credential. I mean, that's gonna essentially you're gonna go, okay, you won a championship. That's if you've been trained by any of the Harts, that's maybe more impressive than how many titles you've had. If you've come out of that alive, if you come out of that and had a career in the WWE or WWF or WCW, that is a humongous accolade. So Davey Boy Smith, yeah, of course, he has to be here.
TV's Mr. Neal, I agree.
Yeah, I think he belongs on the list. He's not one of my favorites, actually. We're really going to have to talk about, when we get to Bret Hart, talk about how he would just walk people through matches and make them look 10 times better than they actually were. That SummerSlam match was an amazing Davey Boy Smith match that never really had its equal after that, before or after. Not really one of my favorites. His gimmick was that he was British, I guess.
Yes.
That's basically it. Oh, he was very strong, and he had a dog.
Bo Derek dreads.
Yeah, I like him without the dreads. He and Christian belong to the Cut My Hair Club. That I think he looks a lot better without it. That's really all I got to say about the guy. He's not really one of my top guys.
All right, fair enough. You're allowed to have that opinion. I wish Alex was here for this next one, because we're getting into another wrestler that was ranked in somebody's top 10. I feel like I gave it away and who's that person was. But I'm hoping you guys can help me out, because I'm not very familiar with this wrestler. A lot of international success, and obviously more of a cultural icon, I think, in my book. Debuted in 1934. He was actually ranked number 2 by Alex overall, and he's falling here at number 63, probably just because a lot of people don't know of him or have blind spots when it comes to him. We're talking about someone who has statues of himself in a lot of different places south of the border, and we're talking about somebody who went by the ring name of El Santo. El Santo was, there's a statue of him in Tulancingo. There's also statues of him in multiple other places, in a lot of different Hall of Fames, including the WWE inducted him in 2018, mostly in lucha matches and in the lucha scene. Is anybody familiar with El Santo that can talk to him? Otherwise, I'm going to... Okay, go for it, DJ.
When I say familiar with him, I watched a video by a guy named I forget his name, but he hosts a YouTube show called Fact Fiend, and he was explaining who this guy is. And this guy wasn't just a wrestler; like he was like The Rock before The Rock. Like he had like in Mexico, he was on television, and they would he would be in shows, and they wouldn't shoot him. They didn't want him to take his mask off. And they would make sure that they would have a stunt double wear a mask, because they really want to imply that he took his mask off. It's such a big freaking deal. And he's like one of these humongous wrestlers back then. And when he actually did on television reveal himself, people were like gasping. It was a big freaking deal. I think he transcended wrestling to the fact where he would be in movies like that have nothing to do with wrestling, wearing a mask. So
it was El Santo,
So you would watch him, and he'd be at a dinner party or something wearing a luchador mask, or he'd be driving a car with his girlfriend wearing a luchador mask and wearing like a 3-piece suit and a luchador mask. It was just part of the culture and part of his mythos back in the day.
It says that his funeral was considered one of the biggest in Mexican history. And I believe he was also, I want to say he was buried in the mask as well. I believe that was one of his requests because, the silver one was one of the main ones that he had, the silver mask. So, but yeah, a lot of cultural appearances in TV shows, movies, some rock band or music video type things that he was connected to. So, and he's also, there's a cameo of him in the movie Coco from Pixar a couple of years back. They found a way to squeeze him in there as well. So I am going to give Alex a chance to talk about El Santo when he's on next, just to give him a minute since he was ranked number 2 on his list. But
did they ever do the thing where he takes the mask off and there's another mask on underneath?
I'm gonna give you guys a link to the video where the guy, he did something crazy like that. Like not even his stunt double could wear not have a mask on, something weird like that, where it was like they did not even want to imply that it was coming off. And then when it actually did happen, when he was like in his 60s or he was like very, very old, it was like a humongous deal where I'll send you guys a video. But yeah, if you do yourself a favor, look up El Santo on Fact Fiend, and it was essentially goes through his history, and it's more about how he never took his mask off. It wasn't really about his wrestling career. It was just like everywhere he went, he would in his house cutting his lawn, he would never take his freaking mask off. It was crazy.
Nice. We've had quite a few, well, not quite a few. We've had a couple of the old classics that have shown up. As far as on the American side, we had Vern Gagne and Gorgeous George show up last time. We are going to go there here for one now as well, to a classic that a lot of you guys are going to be familiar with, I feel. And he was known for his persona, for his flair, for his charisma, I guess you could say. And a lot of people obviously modeled their careers after him. He debuted in 1969, trained by, guess who, guys? Stu Hart, trained by Stu Hart. And we're talking about none other than superstar Billy Graham. I did not know he was trained by Stu Hart, so that is news to me. But a lot of gold in the NWA and some other places as far as the independent scene. Was voted most hated wrestler of the year in 1973 by the PWI. He had voted the match of the year in 1977 with Bruno Sammartino, match of the year in 78 with Bob Backlund, WWF heavyweight champion once, and inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004. Obviously, people like Jesse the Body Ventura and Hulk Hogan, and even a little bit maybe Ric Flair and some others modeled their careers after the superstar. So, Matthew, what do you think of superstar Billy Graham showing up here at number 62?
He's before my time, so I never really saw him wrestle, but his look has been iconic in what you just said, Kev, where it's like, Ric Flair, Macho Man, Jesse the Body, things like that. And even like, if you compared almost like, I feel early Hulk Hogan, if you put him and Billy Graham next to each other, they're almost like the splitting image in a lot of ways too. So I can't speak for his wrestling prowess. I mean, I'm sure he's a big, strong man who, of course, if you're in the ring with Bob Backlund, and Bob Backlund sadly will likely not show up on this list, but I love that Bob Backlund a lot. When he snaps and he's crazy.
Heel Bob Backlund.
Heel Bob Backlund was but also a great wrestler. He was legit like a real great wrestler in and of himself. But I know the persona of Billy Graham, but I can't wax like, okay, he was a great performer in the ring. I think he was more, larger than life personality, which lended, credence to everybody. He was a trendsetter. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have had all three of those other mega stars in the ring.
Right. Also, one of the, obviously we had a lot of people that were more like in that era. A lot of your stars were, wrestlers, wrestling background, so to speak. He was one of the ones that was a bodybuilder. That was kind of that type of physique and that type of stuff. And I think interesting, obviously has had some brushes with WWE and the McMahons as far as calling them out and doing shoots on them and whatnot. But I'm glad that he was able to get in the Hall of Fame regardless. DJ, what do you think of superstar Billy Graham, or as his real name would be, Eldridge Wayne Coleman?
Well, Eldridge and I remember when Scott Steiner came out. We were just talking about him. He kind of not stole, but he looks very similar to older Billy Graham when he had the bald head and the and the weird painted the blonde goatee, and he would flex the same. It would be I would love to ask. He probably already said this on record somewhere. Where did he model your look after superstar Billy Graham? He's one of those guys where his physique was very weird to look at because people aren't built that way. He looks like one of those muscle men you leave out in the sun and it's kind of melted, where it's all shoulders and there's no legs that's running around. But no, superstar Billy Graham he's in a rap song. Matt wouldn't be able to. Which rap is it? Redman? Somebody had use his name in a rap song. If you're using
I'm sure. When
you're your fan.
Mid '90s, at least early 2000s, they're always dropping wrestling names in their rap lyrics.
Superstar Billy Graham was a go-to. So yeah.
TV's Mr. Neal, any thoughts on superstar Billy Graham before we move on?
I'm afraid this is going to be a giant bag of sand because he's way before my time.
He's only 76, Neil. He's only 76 years old.
Looking at him, he is the archetypal heel wrestler. I can see his influence on a lot of modern day wrestlers who I was a big fan of, but I'm not familiar with his in-ring work at all. I just know of his name and his aura, and I can say, yes, he probably definitely belongs on this list, but I can't really speak to him.
Right, fair enough. Number 61, we're not going to spend too much time on because we accidentally talked about him last time. So making a huge jump from the 70s all the way up to 61 would be Bam Bam Bigelow. So we talked about him last time. He actually should have been talked about right now. So go back to last episode and hear our thoughts about Bam Bam. DJ, any quick thoughts since you weren't on that episode about Bam Bam being at 61?
How did he get into that suit?
Wow. The suit was actually part of him.
I mean, good God. How much powder, how much Gold Bond did he use?
All tattoo. He's actually naked.
Just airbrushed himself. I would believe that. I'd accept that. I'd take that.
He is on a lot of people's list, and that's what gets him all the way up to here at number 61. I can't believe the trends we're having here. So how about another tag team member here at number 60? Apparently this is the episode where we see a lot of tag team members. So number 60, he debuted in 1992, trained by Dory Funk Jr., was known as Angus Jinx, the Rahway Reaper, Surge, Wolverine, High Voltage. How about Isan Hardy or just Matt Hardy?
Oh, yeah! I can slap a tornado. I can dry up a sea, yeah. When I live for the moment, there ain't no with me.
Or Broken Matt. Matt Hardy is our number 60. Doesn't need much of an introduction. We've talked about the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, etc. Obviously, most tag-related things, including 3-time Raw champions with Jeff Hardy, with Bray Wyatt, with MVP, SmackDown tag with Jeff Hardy, TNA tag with Jeff Hardy, 6 other times as world tag teams in the WWF with Jeff Hardy. Did have some single stuff as well. I don't need to go into it too much more, though. Let's start with Matthew Stewart. What do you think of Matt Hardy being here at number 60, and how does that fit into the conversation with the likes of Davey Boy Smith, Rick Steiner, Christian, Bubba Ray Dudley, and those other tag people we've talked about?
I mean, this is a guy who, in the same vein, I think of Christian, kind of reinvented himself as different characters. I mean, he started with him and Jeff as the good old Hardy Boys, jumping around and doing high flying stuff, and then he broke off because they had the big feud, and then he was Matt. Was it version 2.0 or whatever?
Yeah. Version 1.
That stuff was hilarious.
Internet, folks.
It's like the internet is cool. I'm going to take advantage of the internet. And then, of course, later on down the line, he took full advantage of the internet and went completely viral with the whole broken Matt gimmick. Which, I mean, that is basically a promotion to TNA saying, "Look, man, I don't really know what to do. Can you just do something that's going to be really weird?" He's like, "I guess. How about I dye my hair one color on one side and do really weird stuff and things that are just kind of out of left field." So I like Matt Hardy a lot. I think wrestling prowess, Jeff I would say he's the better wrestler. He was more of the underdog. He was the one more of the face that everybody like. He was super, I think, more over than Matt, except for the broken gimmick. But it will be interesting to see. I think Matt will show up on the list at this point. Just a matter of where. But it is kind of this trend of seeing these tag team wrestlers showing up on the list and seeing where they land, right, and trying to figure out where their cohort or their tag team partner is going to land, because most of these tag team partners are going to land somewhere. It's just a matter of where.
I want to say that they credit him for a lot of the ideas that the Hardys came up with over the years, and that he was more of the, maybe not necessarily the brains, but the idea creative person behind the two. I'm hoping I'm getting that right, but I want to say they say that is Matt.
I can see that.
DJ, what do you think of Matt Hardy coming in, and does he deserve a spot in the top 100?
I think out of the Hardy Boys, it does make sense that he was the brains, because one of those other table for threes, he did admit that like he liked to branch off. He liked branching off for the simple fact that when he was with the Hardys, Jeff was more of a risk taker than him. He didn't really like, jumping off of a Titantron or, tables falling out of a ring. He would do it, but it was more Jeff's thing, and he liked to reinvent himself. And though his singles run for me that I remember is the thing that Matt brought up, the version 1 Matt Hardy. And I just love how every time he would do it, it'd be another Matt does not like snow or something like that. I used to love those.
Matt doesn't like being cold.
The Matt
he didn't have to wrestle after that. He could have just walked out and like Homer Simpson's dad, just walk right back out, right up the ramp. I wouldn't need him to wrestle, because those are really entertaining to me. But again, these are just guys that are kind of like hampered with, they are more famous for, especially him, being a Hardy, being in the tag team. He did have a okay singles career, but he will forever, no matter what happens, it's going to be because he was with Jeff.
TV's Mr. Neal, any thoughts on Matt Hardy before we move on?
Yeah, I just wish that he could have shook off the stink of being one of the Hardys. I mean, the Hardy Boys, great tag team, but he really deserved to be recognized as a singles wrestler just because he was so entertaining. He was so funny. The Matt facts that we just mentioned.
Great. So great.
So awesome. Him being able to meme himself back into a job just for having his girlfriend cheating on him in real life. That was beautiful.
Let's move on then to number 59. So we're into our 50s now, and we're going to have another classic old school wrestler here coming in. I don't know how many people know him by his real name, which would have been Herman Gustav Rode Jr., but I don't think many people knew him by that. They probably just knew him by Buddy Rogers, the Nature Boy. Before the Nature Boy, debuted in 1939, retired in 1982. Let's go over some Hall of Fames that he's in. In NWA Hall of Fame 2010. He is also in the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame and Museum in 2002. He is in the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2008. He is in the WWF Hall of Fame in 94. He is in the VCW Hall of Fame in 2018. I don't even know what half of these Hall of Fames are. The Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame in 96. He's got accolades when it comes to Hall of Fames, that's for sure. He was also the WWF World Heavyweight Champion one time as the inaugural champion there. DJ, any knowledge about the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers?
You add a W to that one? Was it WWF? Is that what you said?
That was before. That was when it was Vince's dad at one point.
Oh, okay. It's just funny because it's because of the air of the time. In 1939, Buddy Rogers is the name you go with. But in 2019, he would definitely go by Herman Gustav. There's no possible way Vince is gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna use Herman Gustave. That's a cool freaking name. But in 1939, you can't go by Herman. You got to go by one of those old, hey, drink some milk, kids, before you go to bed. You got to go by Buddy Rogers. I'm not familiar with him.
Heel or something like that.
Yeah, right. Herman Gustave sounds like a drug lord or some kind of man who kills for money. But no, I'm not a Highlander, so I do not remember Herman Gustave from 1939. I think that, but you've just named 55 Hall of Fames he's in, so I'm assuming he needs to be here.
He held the NWA and the WWF at the time, which is now known as the WWE title. Says he's one of 3 men in history to have held both world titles, the other 2 names being AJ Styles and Ric Flair. So I guess there's that. Matthew Stewart. Matthew Stewart, how does this Nature Boy deserve? Is there room for more than one Nature Boy in the top 100?
Oh, there's got to be room for Nature Boy.
There's always room for Nature Boy.
There's always room for Nature Boy. I mean,
it's a weird title. Can I just say that first of all? Have you ever thought of that?
Whenever I think of the word Nature Boy, I think of like if I was in butt ass naked somewhere because I'm in nature.
Right.
Like this is
like where did that come from?
Butt ass naked somewhere. That's the problem.
I don't know. I'm the nature.
Like 50 years from now, when we look back at AEW, is Jungle Boy going to have a different, like, is that going to be a different reference?
No, it's
the Nature Boy,
the Forest Boy, the Swamplands Man. I don't know what you really want to do with that. I mean, I guess the biggest thing. I mean, you go with all the Hall of Fames and the history. I mean, he wrestled for nearly 4 or 5 decades as well too. So he had the longevity, and he held all these belts for the territories at the time. And of course, I think most famously, Ric Flair took his name gimmick and used it as kind of like a ode to him in a lot of ways, like, oh, thank you for passing the torch type of thing. So never saw the guy wrestle. I mean, this is the era of wrestling I'm not familiar with. I'm sure most, like DJ said, we're not Highlanders here, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad he's on the list for historical wrestling purposes. So there you go.
We need some like history expert to tell us like where we got these right or wrong between like Gorgeous George and Vern Gagne and Buddy Rogers and Billy Graham.
But the stories are like, you guys are idiots.
TV's Mr. Neal, is he deserving? I'm assuming you would say yes.
I guess so. It's another one of these cases where I'm like, hey, I know that name. I can't wait until we get to talk about George Hackenschmidt and Frank Gotch.
Buddy Rogers sounds like a guy that changes your tire. Like, thanks, Buddy Rogers.
Oh, Lord. All right, let's keep going then. Let's go to number 58 as we make our way through the 50s here to end today's episode. We're going to talk about a guy that made his debut in 1979, was trained by Fritz von Erich. He went by the ring names of The Convict, Derek Wood, or King Duggan, or maybe just Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hacksaw Jim Duggan comes in at number 58 here. Spent a lot of time in Mid-South, WWF, WCW. He made a stop in TNA. Why? What? He couldn't have. He was too old by then.
All good things go to death.
Oh my God, that seems wrong on so many levels. Anyways, as far as any type of gold or anything like that or Hall of Fames, he was inducted into the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2018. He was a WCW World Television Champion once, a United States Heavyweight Champion once, WWE won the Royal Rumble in 1988, WWE Hall of Fame 2011, Slammy Award for Best Vocal Performance. I don't know which they're referring to, and Greatest Hit 1987. I must have missed that. Feud of the Year in the Wrestling Observer Newsletter 1985 with Ted DiBiase. Most Improved 1982. Most Unimproved in 1989.
What?
That's a word.
Most what?
They voted him the most unimproved in 1989.
Oh, come on.
That's most discouraging wrestling.
Mean man. This is mean man.
TV's Mr. Neil. We'll start with you this time. What do you think? Hacksaw Jim Duggan in the 50s.
Oh my God. When you said the convict, I was like, how the hell did Nails get on here? Thank God. Thank God it's Duggan. I love Duggan. One of my favorite cartoon wrestlers from when I was a kid. Is so ridiculous. He'd come out with the 2x4. Looks like he took a couple 2x4s to the face. like one eye's pointed one way, the other one's pointed the other. You can't tell what the hell he's looking at. Really funny guy. Never really got any accolades. Never really won any titles in WWF. I know he got. Oh, he won the U.S. title from stunning Steve Austin of all people.
Jesus.
At a WCW pay-per-view. And that's when Austin was like, I'm out of here. But I can't help but love him. He's so ridiculous.
I mean, he definitely is proof that all you have to do is wave an American flag to get over with the fans at times, I guess. Yeah. DJ, Hacksaw, 58, worthy or not?
Ever was going to cast Seth Rogen as a wrestler, it'd be Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I have a question. It was more of a question than a comment. Was he ever a heel? I don't remember him ever being a bad guy.
At one point he turned on America just like Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh, he did?
Really? I missed that part.
Didn't he at one point? I thought they did that.
I know Sergeant Slaughter did. I was around for that, but I don't remember Hacksaw being a bad guy.
Team Canada in WCW, and it didn't last very long just because nobody wanted to boo Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
I mean, every time I see him, it was just like he's automatic cheap pop. It was automatic. Mm-hmm. He got a 2x4 to American flag. I was thinking when you were talking about him, like, I think he was always a face, but you guys, one little incident where he was a bad guy. Yeah, he's iconic in terms of my childhood, I remember him a lot for one of the weirdest gimmicks, not the weirdest, but this in terms of how basic it was, is essentially a 2x4, a burly beard, and an American flag, and you can be wrestling for 20 years. It's just crazy.
Yep.
I don't know if we can really count his team up with Lance Storm as anything legit, though, as far as Team Canada goes. Matthew, what do you think of Hacksaw being 58?
He was like just a caricature of everything in America, I guess. Like, it's just like this ne'er-do-well, like, oh, thumbs up, and his finishing move was like literally a football. Like, he would get down in a 4-foot stance and run at you. He wouldn't spear you. He would just kind of like football hit you, shoulder block you. That was the finishing move. But it's funny because I know we talked about the Iron Sheik earlier on in the countdown as well. And if you've ever seen that documentary, The Sheik, all about the Iron Sheik, he's kind of him and the Sheik were like feuding at the time, and they were going back and forth, like Iranian versus, or wherever Iron Sheik was representing Iraq. It was like America versus the Middle East, and then they were literally in a car together, like drunk or high as shit, and they got pulled over in Georgia, and they let Duggan go because he was American hero, and they threw the Sheik in jail. And this was like the beginning of like the end of kayfabe in a lot of ways. So if for anything, he could almost be more infamous for almost like destroying the facade of bad guys versus good guys, because you can't have Hacksaw hanging out with the Iron Sheik and getting drunk and drinking Budweiser's at a bar or something like that, or whatever. No, I take that back. Cocaine. Sorry. Sorry. I apologize.
All right. So Hacksaw Jim Duggan takes the number 58 spot, which means we're moving on to number 57. This wrestler made his debut in 1999. We haven't had a lot of those that were like kind of turn of the millennial there. Some people might know him as Khan. No, nobody knows him as Khan. Some people might know him as Leviathan. Well, maybe a couple people. Some people might know him as Drax the Destroyer. Or Deacon Batista. Drax the Destroyer is not a wrestling name, guys. That's from Guardians of the Galaxy. We're talking about Mr. Dave Batista, who is coming in here at the 57th spot. Obviously now probably more known for his movie roles, but once upon a time was a big-time wrestler. World Heavyweight Champion 4 times in the WWE, World Tag Team Champion 3 times, 2 with Ric Flair, 1 with John Cena, WWE Champion twice, WWE Tag Champion once with Rey Mysterio, 2-time Royal Rumble winner, I believe, Feud of the Year 2005 with Triple H, Feud of the Year in 2007 with Undertaker, most overrated in 2006, whatever. Wrestler of the Year. He gets Wrestler of the Year from the PWI in 2005 and the Most Improved Wrestler of the Year in 2005, but then the Wrestling Observer newsletter, most overrated in 2006.
Wow. Screw them. We're right.
We were wrong. I'm sorry, guys.
TV's Mr. Neil Batista, one of the more, not necessarily modern day wrestlers, but not too far in the past like we've had with a bunch of the other ones on our countdown. What do you think of Batista coming in at 57?
You know what? When he debuted, I was just a little too aware of the mystique of Goldberg and just WWE trying to recapture that sort of wrestler, kind of the big, muscly guy that has like the big power moves. So I couldn't help but kind of pigeonhole him into that category. So I never really dug him that much. Although I did like the thumbs up, thumbs down thing they did in Evolution and screwing over who was it?
Randy Orton, right?
Yeah, Randy Orton. That was kind of a good thing. And then they brought it back when he eventually defected. That was a good callback. But otherwise, not a really big fan of his in-ring work. I'm not a Batista fan, I guess.
Man, and more hate from Neil on these big muscle-bound guys. First it was the Bulldog. He's not Vince McMahon. He also has an undefeated MMA career, 1-0. So for whatever that's worth. I do remember seeing a match of him when he was the Leviathan. I believe it's against Lesnar in, I can't remember where that was at, but that is an interesting match because nobody knows who either guy is at this point. When they're wrestling, they're basically both unknowns, and it's an interesting match to kind of seek out if you have a chance to. I want to say it's on the WWE Network somewhere, but I would suggest finding that. It's kind of interesting to watch. DJ, what do you think of Batista being here at number 57?
He's one of the most fun characters to use in SmackDown. It's sad though because he's retired now. Because when he left and learned how to act, James Gunn taught him how to act, and he was in Blade Runner and stuff like that, and then came back. He was such a better wrestler for me. Like the latest thing he did with Triple H, give me what I want, and he just took out Ric Flair and stuff like that. That was like, you could tell he had picked up some stuff on how to perform, because before when he was there, he was very stiff when he was talking, but when he was back with like recently in the last year, he was so good. It's like, oh, now he's retired because you can make the same amount of money working 1 month a year than 355 days of the year. So yeah, I like Batista. I like him more now than I did then, and I look back at like when he had his little thing with Eddie Guerrero and stuff like that. I go, oh yeah, I should have appreciated this more. But yeah, I prefer him now where he is because he's doing good stuff. I mean, I really like his acting performance. And in terms of wrestlers that have branched off into movies, I prefer what he's doing than what Cena's doing. He ain't beating The Rock, but Cena
he's top still, 3, right? Top 3 for wrestlers that are in the movies.
I don't know, because Cena's not going to. I mean,
no, I'm talking about Batista.
Oh yeah. I'd probably say
5.
So. Yeah,
he's top 5.
He's better than Hogan. He might be in the top 3. He was in a Blade Runner movie, for Christ's sake.
Matt, what do you think about Batista?
I like the Evolution angle. That was cool. It was like the new 4 Horsemen and stuff like that, which was really neat. And big muscly guy. And he had like super, like when he did his moves, like Batista, when he did the Batista bomb and like other things, it was like, holy shit, this guy just killed somebody because he looked at that much of a monster in the ring. But yeah, he didn't really have the mic chops at the time. And like to DJ's point, he actually got some lessons in order how to speak into a microphone and actually make it matter or make at least the crowd care about you. But then again, I mean, he's probably one of the more muscly guys I think we've had on the countdown so far too. They just got pushed all the way to the moon basically. And I think that the crowd resented him because the crowd, because wrestling crowds suck in general. They're so horrible. Yeah, this for all you people out there. You guys suck.
He does
easy events.
He does also make the sub list of wrestlers who were bodyguards beforehand or bouncers.
Yes,
because he did that. He tried out for WCW with the WCW Power Plant, but was told that he would never make it in the wrestling business by Buddy Lee Parker. That's when he went to Ohio Valley Wrestling and got to wrestle with the likes of the prototype John Cena and Lesnar before anybody knew who any of these people were. So Batista, number 57. Now, somebody a while back tried to predict the future and say that certain members would or would not show up on this list moving forward. And they were wrong, because at number 56, we're going to get somebody that we were told we weren't going to get to see. And that is the one and only Mr. Bob Backlund at number 56. So debuted, the crowd likes this one. He's over. Debuted in 1973. It says he retired in 2011, but like we said, anyway, he was in TNA in 2007. I didn't know that. So Bob Backlund obviously had the belt forever in the WWF. He was a champion 2 times, a tag team champion once with Pedro Morales. Got a Slammy Award for being the most eccentric in 1994.
What a title. What a reward.
Inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2013. Wrestling Observer Newsletter, Best Technical Wrestler in 1980. Match of the Year 1980 versus Ken Patera in a Texas death match in New York City, New York. I don't know how that works. He was most disgusting promotional tactic in 1982 for being the WWF champion, I guess.
The most disgusting what?
Wow.
It says he got the most disgusting promotional tactic from this newsletter, and it says for being WWF champion.
How do you qualify that?
Wow.
He got PWI Match of the Year in 1978 versus Superstar Billy Graham. Match of the Year 1982 versus Jimmy Snuka in a steel cage match. Most Hated Wrestler of the Year 1994. That's when he was doing his heel turn in WWF. Most Inspirational Wrestler of the Year 77, 1981. A lot of other things to go along with this that I don't need to mention. Mr. Neal, what do you think of Bob Backlund showing up here at 56?
Oh my God. If there was ever a wrestler who completely reinvented himself late in his career, other than Hogan, obviously, it would have to be Bob Backlund. Bob Backlund, heel Bob Backlund. I can't really talk about his early babyface stuff. I mean, I know that's a big selling point of him because he was the champion for so long. But a lot of us, I think most people on the show will remember him completely snapping on Bret Hart and then winning the title and then unfortunately losing it like a day or two later.
Diesel with like 7 seconds.
Of all people. Could you imagine if he had kept that title and came out to the ring with no theme song? Just how obnoxious that would be in the new generation era when everyone had a theme song. Here he comes, this old school wrestler, does the duck walk in the ring, where he's like walking on his knees or what. I remember he did some goofy walk like that. I can't remember exactly what he did, but it was like some walk that was like really difficult to do unless you were really in shape. And he was so great. I love when he was on the beach and he had the nose cream on his face. That vignette, that was great. He just, for like a solid year, he was the best. I love that feud he had with Hart, except for the WrestleMania match, which was nothing to talk about. I just remember, what do you say?
He also tried to run for a Congress seat in Connecticut in 2000, but did not win. I've heard that he's not necessarily the nicest guy to talk to in real life, but I don't know if that's true or not. But
apparently he's disgusting. Apparently that's
the most disgusting tactic.
DJ, what do you think of Bob Backlund showing up here?
Where do I start? Do I start with the Pee Wee Herman outfit he comes out with, or the suspenders, or the chicken wing is his special move? It's just Bob Backlund is like that guy when you're like at a basketball court and like everybody looks like a prototypical, like, LeBron James, and there's this white guy in the corner with the gray socks and like the dress shoes who's hitting threes from the corner. That's Bob Backlund.
He's Billy Hoyle. He's Billy Hoyle.
He's Woody Harrelson and White Men Can't Jump. He shouldn't be good. He shouldn't be killing people, but he is, because he's this. I guess he's like American William Regal. I don't even know what it is, but something about him where he's just so uptight and he's got the most nerdiest outfit on, and he there's nothing about him that's charismatic. He doesn't have theme music.
Calling people plebeians.
But you love him because he just fits a role of this guy. We need more of this guy. So,
Absolutely.
I always love Bob Backlund because it was just like, oh, this is gonna be. Whenever he came out, I was like, okay, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna be entertained for the next 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever will happen.
Matthew, last thoughts on Bob Backlund before we move into our final five for today.
Yeah, I remember him from the Bob Backlund snaps. He was almost like the prototypical like Ken Shamrock. Like before Ken Shamrock was snapping, Bob Backlund was snapping, and I remember like when he did fight Bret the Hitman Hart, he put like the Hitman like in the crossface chicken wing for like 5 minutes. I was like, holy shit, this is like another murder happening right now. And then his mother,
You'll never use that arm again.
Yeah, it's like, you will never use it. This is horrible. It's like the body's not supposed to be bent that way for that long. And then I guess later on down the line when he did the whole, was where he was Cedric Alexander, I think, or something, where it's like, make this guy great again or something. He was doing like the mentor thing to the other dude. I don't know if it was Cedric Alexander, but it was pretty recent. But yeah, I mean, Bob Backlund being crazy was amazing. And the guy is a really great wrestler, and he held the WWF title for like a really, really long time. So I'm glad a reasonably, I want to say unknown, but an enigmatic wrestler is kind of right smack in the middle of this countdown. So I'm very happy about that. And I'm happy I wasn't wrong. So yes.
We put the wrestling theme songs before each wrestler that comes up on this list. I think for this one, I'm just going to leave it silent.
Yeah.
He has no theme music.
Nice. So like I said, there is 5 spots left. These are 5 people that do make the top 100, but that do not make the top 50, whichever way you want to look at it. So let's start here with number 55 here. Let's see if you guys know any of these names. The Black Baron, Dr. Knows-It-All, The Texan, Chainsaw Charlie.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Mr. Terry Funk coming in here at 55. I couldn't tell you who he was trained by because it was Dory Funk, so I thought that might give it away. But obviously spent a lot of time in a lot of different places, including the NWA, All Japan, WWF, WCW, IWA, ECW, and everywhere in between. Where do you start with this guy's accomplishments? I'm not going to read them all, but WWE Hall of Fame in 2009, WWF Tag Team Championship once with Cactus Jack. So many Hall of Fames that I can't even get into them all. WCW Hardcore Champion 3 times, WCW Hall of Fame in 95, NWA United States Championship once or twice. We all know who Terry Funk is. DJ, is he deserving of being right about here at number 55? Should he be higher or lower?
And Elliot in Roadhouse, man. He's just this guy. You don't look like a wrestler. You look like a guy that's smoking cigarettes on the side of the street. Oh, wait a minute, that's barbed wire there. He's going to kill somebody. Terry Funk is like is a legend, man. He has to be on this list. Again, if anybody out there doesn't know Terry Funk, Google him. You're like, that guy's a wrestler? Yeah. And he'll whip your ass. Terry Funk was one of those. Just the fact that he didn't give a crap, man. I think he was my Stone Cold before there was a Stone Cold where he didn't give a crap about anything. He would do anything. He would wear doesn't he wear like the Japanese headband and all that types of stuff like that?
Yep.
Yeah. I love Terry Funk. The fact that like when people go, don't smoke, don't drink, don't do drugs. Well, look, Terry Funk is doing it. He's still alive. He's the Keith Richards of wrestling.
And the other thing is too, someone else that was able to reinvent himself so many different times. I mean, if you look at him in like the mid 70s, like he's actually a bulky, wrestling guy. Like he looks like he's got some meat to him compared to like you look at him, probably when we're more familiar with him when obviously he was a lot older, a lot more lean, I guess, or skinny than he was in his heyday. So I mean, that's someone who's just been able to recreate after recreate, and obviously a big instrumental influence in people like Mick Foley and things of that nature. So obviously it has an impact on the wrestling business as well. Matthew, what do you think about Terry Funk coming in right here?
I mean, I liked the gimmick when he was with Cactus Jack and he was Chainsaw. He was just like a scary Leatherface type character with a stocking on his head. I thought it was amazing. But I think the first time I really heard about like Terry Funk was in watching Beyond the Mat and what he kind of did for ECW and making it a viable promotion by literally just putting himself out there on the line and nearly killing himself. Right. That says a lot for what he did and what he meant to these up and coming wrestlers. Like, damn, this guy's 55, 60 years old. He's still wrestling. And how many different, I mean, you got to look at his retirement. Like, retired here, retired here, retired here, retired here. He still might not even be retired at this point.
I don't think so. I don't even know.
But I mean, I like him because he's eccentric and weird, and yeah, and he was in Roadhouse. And he's like, what did he say? Like, what did he say to Patrick Swayze? You're not worth a lick of hair on my dick or something like that.
Something really bad like that.
I hear you come in a dump truck or something like that. It was something weird. I don't know.
He said something creepy, man. It was.
If it's not that, then I'm questioning where you came up with that.
Like, opinions vary.
TV's Mr. Neal, what do you think of Terry Funk?
Crazy.
Sum it up in one word. There you go.
No fashion sense whatsoever. Those tights that he wears, the stripes and the trunks on over. Oh my God, the guy's got no knees. He's a broken man, but he just doesn't know when to quit.
Thank God.
I don't think I can add to anything that these guys already said. I just always think of the most reckless wrestler whoever was is probably Terry Funk.
All right, there's 4 more left here. Number 54 once went by the ring name of Wildo Jinx or Willow or Itchweed, or in his first WWF appearance as a jobber, Keith Davis, Brother Nero maybe?
Oh, yes.
How about Jeff Hardy coming in here at number 54? So we already talked about Matt. Now we talk about Jeff. DJ, did we get that in the right order? And is this a good spot for Jeff Hardy?
In terms of, we were just talking about Terry Funk in terms of, the most reckless wrestler of all time. Jeff Hardy has to be in that discussion. I mean, Jeff Hardy, that I will always remember him on the Titantron, jumping off, doing the senton through a table. What the hell? I can't remember which pay-per-view that was, but I'm like, you just killed yourself on live television. You can't. The fact that he is able to stand. I didn't know about the whole thing he had in TNA with Sting. I just found it out the other day where it was like he was really like messed up, and Sting kind of like the thing. Yeah. It made me sad because I just remember the good Jeff Hardy, but this when Jeff Hardy was at the pinnacle where he would not be a world champion, but he would be more over than like world champions. And he's just this guy because he would put his body, all of them put their bodies on the line, but he would do stuff that is the tables, ladders, and chairs matches this guy's been in. It's kind of sad because, again, we're talking about Matt, how he's just always going to be linked to Jeff, and Jeff's always going to be linked to Matt. But the man's one of the most dangerous wrestlers you've ever seen. If Jeff Hardy was in a match as a table, ladders, and chairs, it's must watch. And the fact that it wouldn't even be the final match, it's like, how is this in the middle? How do you follow up a Jeff Hardy tables, ladders, and chairs match? How do you do it?
You don't. I didn't list the championships because there's too many to list, but he is a Grand Slam champion, a Triple Crown champion, and all of those types of things. Matthew Stewart, should Jeff Hardy be higher than Matt like we have it here?
I think from a wrestling prowess, probably yes. I always thought he was a better performer, and the fact that he fought like the demons and everything, and of course you bring up that Sting match where it was like, what the hell, man? It's like you look at the glaze in his eyes, and it's just he's gone, and then took some time off, and then came back, and the program he worked with, CM Punk was interesting because it was dealing with like real issues he was dealing with, and literally CM Punk was like, you're a drug addict. And he's like, look, we don't really have to air this out on TV, but it's fine. But I mean, yeah, just the enigma, Jeff Hardy, and yeah, jumping off high things. I mean, Shane McMahon does that type of stuff, but he doesn't do it like Jeff Hardy. So I'm happy with his placement here. It seems right to me.
I agree. Neil, any last comment on Jeff Hardy?
Whenever I think of Jeff Hardy, I just think of this guy who's able to use his own body as a projectile weapon. He's just constantly throwing his own body at other wrestlers. Jumping off the Titantron. Again, Sid can't even take a fall off the second rope. Here you got a guy falling 20 feet.
It's fucking factual, man. So true.
That was a good one.
Sid sneezes, his leg snaps in half. Jeff Hardy's jumping off the top of the freaking Astrodome.
Amazing, but yeah, because of Sid, I have a hard time watching Jeff Hardy matches.
Traumatized. All right, 3 left. Let's go to number 53. We're going to start with you, TV Mr. Neil, on your thoughts on this gentleman who didn't have a lot of different ring names besides his own name, really. But maybe you could say that he was known as the King of Memphis Wrestling once upon a time. We're talking about the King. Jerry the King Lawler coming in here at 53. Obviously, a lot of people might just know him as an announcer, but he was a wrestler for a long time before that, starting in 1970 through 92 in Memphis, and then in 92 to 2001 with the WWF. Neil, what do you think of Jerry Lawler, and is he deserving of this spot in the top 100?
Very deserving. I think he's a little underrated just because of people today mostly know him as the announcer on WWE. They don't. I don't think a lot of people remember his Memphis stuff unless they, unless they have the network and can watch some of that. His feud with Andy Kaufman is legendary. The what was it? The dual gender championship belt that Kaufman had, where he'd only wrestle women, and he kind of goaded Lawler into a match. And God, Lawler was super over as a babyface. People don't realize that he was like such a good guy for the longest time. And it was only maybe after, no, it was like actually before he came to WWF, because there was that match with Kerry Von Erich at Super Brawl 3 when they, not Super Clash 3, where they merged the two belts and created the USWA. That's a really good match. Kerry Von Erich versus Jerry Lawler. Lots of good stuff from his pre-WWF days. He was really famous for never losing a hair versus hair match, except for like one of the greatest screw jobs of all time. God, I can't remember. I think it was like Austin Aries. I think it was him. You got to look that up. There's like a whole storyline on YouTube where it's just that, where it's like the time that Jerry Lawler got screwed in a hair match, and it's like an hour long. It's really fascinating to watch. I love Jerry Lawler. Really funny on the mic. Really good ribber. Not as funny as Heenan, but he it's kind of different. They're just kind of different beasts, I guess. But, I can go all day on Lawler, so maybe you guys can add to what I'm saying.
He was voted best color commentator in 95 and 96. Feud of the year 1987 versus Austin Idol and Tommy Rich. Feud of the year 1992 with Jeff Jarrett against the Moondogs. Feud of the year in Austin Idol.
Austin Idol I was thinking of, yeah.
Okay. Feud of the year 1993 versus Bret Hart. Worst feud of the year the next year, 94, versus Doink the Clown. Worst. And then they gave him the worst television announcer in 2002. I don't know about that.
Who did that?
This is the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
Oh, man,
and also the worst, I can't say that, worst worked match of the year, 1994, was Sleazy, Queasy, and Cheesy versus Clowns R Us at Survivor Series. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember it. It was awful.
WWE Hall of Fame in 2007, as well as a lot of other Hall of Fames. DJ, what do you think of Jerry Lawler being here?
The Andy Kaufman stuff, as Neil had brought up, it's I had to like, I was so interesting because I watched Man on the Moon first, and then I went back and watched the actual, though they kind of incorporated some stuff from it, and I was like, wow, I really thought that they hated each other, and the fact that he's such a good performer that you bought it, and then I never watched. That's probably the most I've ever seen Jerry the King Lawler in a physical situation, other than because I grew up with him as an announcer. When I saw him, I knew he had to have been a wrestler at some point, but I never watched him wrestle because he always came out in tights for some reason. But when I am joking around about wrestling, or I'm thinking about wrestling in my youth, him and JR are the voices I hear in my head at all times. Puppies! I hear that every, Jerry King Lawler is, and if you think about wrestling, he's swirling around in there because of all of the matches, and he still had. I mean, he came. The Fiend kind of took him out, but he came recently back to WWE before Bray Wyatt decided to get rid of him, and he's still great on the mic. He's still awesome. So yeah, Jerry the King Lawler. You're never gonna get me complaining about Jerry the King Lawler.
Matthew, last comments on Jerry the King?
I guess on the serious note, like what he did for territorial wrestling, and bought up, and he was like the last kind of like survivor. Memphis wrestling is, a testament to what he did to keep that territory alive. And then the Andy Kaufman thing, like Neil said, is a legend in and of itself, where you kind of know what happened, but who knows what the whole true story is. But it's still something that the ultimate crossover story. This was like the crossover story before any other people were crossing over into wrestling. And then the ultimate heel commentator. I mean, the guy would go up to just talk the most vile shit to like Bret the Hitman Hart's family, and you bought it. It was like, oh, this guy's awful, but it's hilarious at the same time. Him ripping on these like old folks up in the mezzanine and stuff. And then of course, the kiss my foot match was just one of the one of the most over the top, but also one of the more funny things. And of course, Bret being a professional sold it so well. And then of course from that we got Isaac Yankem, and he was the creation of Jerry the King Lawler, probably in some place too. So who's next? Things like that. My personal dentist, Isaac Yankem, and puppies, and him and JR on the mic together. And then of course when he had that heart attack, it was like, oh my God, Jerry the King Lawler was going to die. Of course he didn't die. He's fine.
Right. Well, it always seemed like he was in pretty good shape too, compared to some of the other announcers and people like that.
Yeah, it didn't seem like he really
was aging well. I thought.
Yeah, he's the king.
I had heard recently that whenever he would riff on Bret the Hitman Hart, they'd have to like keep the camera off of Bret because Bret couldn't help but like laugh.
Yeah, I heard that too.
I'm sure it was like, what are you thinking up here?
His laugh would always, like when The Rock would cut a promo, or Stone Cold would cut a promo, and his little it would make the promo even better. Oh my God! Every time like The Rock would say something like outrageous.
When Regal kissed McMahon's ass, that was one of the best ones.
God.
Yes. All right, only room for two people, guys, left on today's episode outside of the top 50. So number 52, this man made his debut in 1968. I don't know if you know him by James Wiley Smith, but that's his real name. Nobody knows him by that because every other name was something to do with Snuka or Superfly. Jimmy Superfly Snuka.
Superfly.
At number 52, let's ignore the whole fact that he was arrested for involuntary manslaughter and third-degree murder for
all
that stuff. But those charges were dismissed. I don't know. That was weird though. That it was supposedly happened in 1983, and he was arrested in 2015. I don't know if that was a forensics thing or what, but unfortunately, no longer with us. Died in 2017 at the age of 73. Obviously, one of the original kind of, I guess, high flyers, so to speak. Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2012, WWE Hall of Fame in 96. Best flying wrestler, according to the Observer, in 1981. Best wrestling maneuver for the Superfly Splash. Also got most unimproved once upon a time. I don't know, and got a worst interviewer. According to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, he was most popular wrestler of the year in 1983. DJ, what do you think of Jimmy Superfly Snuka coming in here?
Oh, brother! No,
brother.
I love Snuka. See, I'm a Piper.
Can we remind everybody that his name is James Wiley Smith? Just kidding.
Brother. Look, brother. I got bodies on my resume, brother. No, but I was a big Piper fan, so the whole coconut Piper. Look.
Oh my god!
I that was one time I saw something. I was like, "This is offensive," but man, this is entertaining. I shouldn't laugh at this. This is pretty bad, but no, Snuka is a legend. I mean, he was a crazy person. In, out, around, on top of, under the ring. He was a crazy person, but he was entertaining. He was just a wild man. So yeah, and you hear the word Snuka, you know, oh, you're talking about wrestling. Even anybody who doesn't know anything about wrestling will hear Snuka. They might even like glean, like, wait a minute, that's not. If you're our ages, we're probably like, yeah, I've heard that before. That's that wrestler guy, that crazy person guy. Yeah. Snuka's a legend. So yeah, I'm with him.
The inaugural ECW World Heavyweight Champion. They held twice. So you go for that. Matthew, what do you think of Superfly being here?
I liked him. I mean, I guess it doesn't make me feel as the overt racism that Roddy Piper did because he wasn't Samoan at all or anything like that. So it probably doesn't bother me all that much. Oh, he's from Fiji?
Close. Yeah, it's from Fiji.
Yeah,
Holland Beach, Florida, by me.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay. Either way, the coconut thing is what made him probably even more famous and made him even more likable. But I like him. He would jump off high things and fall onto other men in the ring and do that. And
what a description!
I mean, and he was also one of the early ones that like wrestled barefoot too. Like a lot of people wouldn't really do that. That was kind of I don't want to say folk. Nobody did that in the ring. So I mean, he had a look and style, but he also had that same. He was in that same era. I felt like Coco Beware and all these other like really gaudy, interesting wrestlers that were kind of like, hey, here's a weird looking wrestler. You have this like guy from Fiji, and then you have a guy with a parrot type thing. I don't know why in my mind I always lumped Coco Beware and Jimmy Snuka in my head. I don't know why I lumped them together. I'm sure they never fought together or did anything together, but for some reason they're almost the same person to me.
He had legacy kind of continues with him too. He had 4 children, one of which was named James Wiley Smith Thomas Rear Snuka, but WWE fans might know him as Deuce. And then we also have Sarona Moana Marie Rear Snuka Polamalu.
Oh yeah,
but most people know her as Tamina. TV's Mr. Neil, what do you think of Jimmy Superfly showing up right on the verge of the halfway point?
Now, Snuka's the guy who should have been called the Nature Boy. Look at he's got the
No, this is the original Jungle Boy.
Jungle Boy.
I'm trying to like remember exactly what he did. I know he's just basically known for like again being the projectile that he just flings his own body at other people. Mostly known for jumping off the top rope, jumping off the top of the cage, just like landing on people in the ring. And I don't remember what else he did. As Heenan would say, he's probably best known for doing things like, the Greco-Roman kick to the mush or something like that. Not a very technical wrestler. Of course, at a time when WWF did not have a lot of technical wrestling to begin with. Mm-hmm. So it's like, what was in his repertoire? I don't know. He's just a human, a human projectile. And that's really all I can kind of think of him as.
Fair enough. I think that's why he's not higher on the list and why he falls right here. One more spot. We're at number 51. Everything else is in the top 50 here. This guy was trained by the likes of Barry Windham, Bob Baruch, and Hiro Matsuda. Debuted in 1985. And you're going to either know of him as the Narcissist or the Total Package. We're talking about Lex Luger coming in, or Lawrence Wendell Fole. Lex Luger, 51. Obviously spent some time in NWA in the 80s, Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW in the 80s, early 90s, went to WWF, came back to WCW, went to TNA, and then we don't want to talk about what happened to him after that, because he is not He's a sight for sore eyes, that's for sure. I mean, it is not good to see what he looks like today. He's a little better than he looked like a few years back, but it is scary to see pictures of him a few years ago. As far as some of the championships he held, we have in WCW World Heavyweight Champion twice, World Television Champion twice, United States Heavyweight Champion 5 times, Tag Team Champion 3 times with Barry Windham, Sting, and the Giants, a WCW Triple Crown Champion. As far as WWF, we have the Royal Rumble winner, tied with Bret Hart that time. He got a Slammy Award for Most Patriotic in 1994. But overall had some good feuds of the year with the Four Horsemen, the Superpowers, and the Road Warriors. Feud of the year with Ric Flair, both in 1988 and 1990. Match of the year in 1991 with Sting versus the Steiner Brothers at Super Brawl. Most popular wrestler of the year 1993. Wrestler of the year 1997. So a lot of accolades there. Let's start with TV's Mr. Neal. I know a lot of people hate on Lex Luger because he might not have been the best in-ring worker or might not have been the best on the mic, but he was around a long time and had a lot of high-profile matches. Do you think he's worthy of being in the top 100?
Sure. He's one of those rare guys whose better time was spent in WCW versus WWF. Because his days in WWF, I didn't really get the American hero gimmick. It felt like they were just trying to reinvent Hulk Hogan, and didn't really go anywhere.
He didn't want to ride that bus. He didn't want to ride that bus.
The bus was ridiculous, and the Royal Rumble thing where they both went over the top rope at the same time was kind of an experiment to see which one of them was actually over, and it was just like, oh shit, it's actually Brett. And like after that run with Yokozuna, it was just like, okay, he's just kind of here now, and teamed with Davey Boy for a little bit, and famously, or perhaps infamously, jumped ship to WCW for the first Nitro, which was a big grab for them because he was actually pretty decent in WCW. His war with the NWO, when he won the title from Hogan on the 100th episode of Nitro, only to give it back a couple of days later. That was a huge moment, and unfortunately, after that, I can't think of too many high points because he joined the NWO during the infamous Finger Poke of Doom, the Finger Poke of Doom night that he became a heel, and it was just kind of like after that.
I just remember early on when I was a child, him coming to the ring as the narcissist with the mirror in the middle of the ring, and then the bionic elbow.
Yeah,
and Heenan just totally like fawning over him at the Rumble. That was great.
He did have a body. Matthew Stewart, is he deserving of being right here about 51?
Oh man, I mean, I can't speak for his wrestling skills. I mean, he was just kind of like the big muscle guy again. He was like the guy that Vince McMahon creams over. This is what he thinks about at night is Lex Luger. He's in the back. He's in gorilla position, literally gorilla position. Like this going, oh my God, this is the best body I've ever seen. So, I mean,
get the mirror, Linda.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, son of a bitch. So, I don't know. I mean, he is fine. He's another body. He had some good spots. I mean, the Yokozuna spot that we talked about earlier was what kind of like turned him into a baby face that everybody liked. And then to your guys' point with the Wolfpack, and I like Wolfpack. NWO. I like red and black. I think better than black and white. It was like the more like gritty. It had the better theme song. I think in a lot of ways too. I like the Wolfpack.
Back to the theme songs.
Yeah, the theme song. That's the better one to me.
Don't turn your back on the Wolfpack. You
might end up in a body bag. That's real right there. But he joins Wolfpack near the end of kind of the good part of the Monday Night Wars too, but I don't know, at 50 it's a tough one. Memorability, yeah, he won some titles, he did his thing, but greatest wrestlers of all time and at number 50, I don't know.
Well, 51 to be fair.
51, okay.
DJ, what do you think? Should he be in the top 100 or not?
He'll be in the top 100. He might be a little high here. I remember everybody talks about the elbow. I really like that move, the rack. I like when he put him on.
The torture rack.
That move was awesome, man.
Especially in WCW when he was doing that. Yeah.
is anybody else doing that?
Dudes on the rack too. Like he put some big guys up there too. So
big guys. Whoa! Did they even tap out or did it just pass out?
I don't know. I don't know. He made him tap out by making hands hit his shoulders. That's what
I think they all needed trips to the chiropractor afterwards.
That's very true. And I put him on the list for the simple fact that he graduated from the U. So I'm from Miami, Florida. Yeah. So the man went to University of Miami. So yeah, Lex Luger, you get a pass, buddy. You and The Rock.
All right, so that is your 75 through 51. Just real quickly: Antonio Inoki, Barry Windham, Jushin Liger, Yokozuna, Brian Pillman, Charlotte Flair, Chyna, Miz, Rob Van Dam, Christian, Rick Steiner, Davey Boy Smith, El Santo, Superstar Billy Graham, Bam Bam Bigelow, Matt Hardy, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Batista, Bob Backlund, Terry Funk, Jeff Hardy, Jerry Lawler, Jimmy Snuka, and Lex Luger. Matthew Stewart, overall thoughts of today's entrance, and this is on the next 25 that we talked about here. What do you think?
This was a pretty fun little quarter of the list. You had a little, little bit like golden age wrestlers from the 30s and 40s and 50s. You had some newer wrestlers as well too. You had some surprises. You had the tag team connection kind of thing going on. So I see where this list is going. So we got another 50 to go, but so far I was a big fan of the people that we put on for the most part here.
TV's Mr. Neal, anybody stand out on that list that doesn't belong, or are you pretty happy with the names that were revealed today?
I'm pretty happy with the names that are revealed today. I'm looking forward to who's going to be coming up in the next 2 weeks. I think we got some more female wrestlers coming up for sure. I think Judy Bagwell. No, Becky. Has Becky Lynch showed up yet?
No, not yet.
No, there's been no
so
Becky.
She's got to be on there. So, I think if Medusa's not on there, that'd be a shame, but I think she would have been on here by now.
DJ, what do you think of the 25 we revealed today? As long if you package them with the 25 we revealed last week, where are we sitting here going into the top 50?
I think this is where I think these are winning. This part of the list is where it's interesting because I think that when it gets to like the top 10, it's going to be, not say predictable, but who's up there. But we have no idea.
Order, right.
It's just the order. Here you can have like surprises like Bob Backlund or Chyna, which was surprising to be, in this kind of level right here. So yeah, I think this is where it's going to get. You're still in the more interesting part of the list. When you get to the top 10 is where you're going to be like, okay, where is that blonde guy going to be, and where is that other guy with the sunglasses going to be, and where is that Samoan guy going to be, and where is that redneck guy going to be? But here is where you're going to be trying to figure out where who's even going to make it. Because when you said Charlotte Flair, I was kind of like, okay, that's low. That means it might be a lot of recency bias because Becky has to be coming up soon. I figured she would be very close to her because Charlotte has as much, if not more, accolades as Becky. So though Becky pretty much got attention back to the WWE recently. So yeah, I think the next part of the list is going to be really cool.
This is the part that people get nervous too of if people will show up or not. Yeah. But I can tell you that I think that we've also reached the point where, and I'm the only one of the group that knows the list. So, I mean, nobody else has seen it. Nobody else can speak to what's coming up. I don't know if we can make any more arguments the rest of the way of anybody not being deserving of being top 100. I think every name that we throw out there, no one's going to have a problem with that they're on the list. It's just going to be debated as far as where they belong on the list. So that's going to be the interesting thing to see. We're not going to give out everybody's information again today. We did it last episode. We will do it on the final episode as well, as far as how people can reach all of us and stay in contact with us. For now, we just want you going to the website, which is geekcastradio.com, and finding the episode post and giving us your comments. We will be giving people, responding to your comments and your feedback that you leave on the website here on the air in the next episode. So we'll kind of give you everybody an update of what people are saying on the site and kind of go from there. So that is 100 now through 51. Next time we were going to do 50 through 26. So I'm looking forward to it. Stay tuned next time for another chance to listen to more wrestling talk as we count down another 25 wrestlers. We'll see you then.
You know what? You just made the list.